Citrus, welcome in. Welcome. I'm already liking the vibes this morning, Citrus. Thank you very much. I'm enjoying the Noti squad. Welcome in, everybody. It is week 7 in the NFL season, and does this means we are what? If there's 17 weeks, we're a little over a third of the way there at this point. We're at least a third of the way there. It's gonna be a big week too. There's some weird games this week. And specifically some weird spreads on the schedule for this week. For whatever reason, it's like this happens to be the week where all of a sudden all of the games are not very good except for a couple, and it's going to be a very interesting week to have to sort through some of these lines. But it basically means that looking at these lines, I think one of the interesting things is, and I would love to know. I'm sure that there's somebody that's like Warren Sharp or somebody that's on the betting lines that has this information. But I'm curious, when is the last time that the NFL hasn't had an upset in a week? Because I feel like every single week there's at least one single upset. And I feel like this particular week might be one of the weeks where there are no upsets. I mean, the closest matchup that we have right now is Atlanta, Miami. Miami's +2.5 at home. That one feels potential. I mean, Carolina and New York, Giants, you could probably get one. You might be able to get an upset there if the Giants play well. It just doesn't feel like it. Vegas, Philly, you could potentially get an upset. Vegas is favored by 3 as of this morning. Let's see. Any other ones? Seattle could potentially upset New Orleans. That's actually a potential one. Yeah, I could see that one happening. Indy, San Fran, maybe. It still doesn't feel like it. I mean, there's a lot of people that would pick Indy to potentially beat the 49ers right now, especially with Jimmy G getting back in the lineup. So this is going to be a really interesting week to kind of have to sift through. There are a couple decent matchups on the schedule, a couple games that are the spreads are pretty large, but I feel like they're going to be a lot closer than what are anticipated. So gonna be tough. Gonna be tough this week to be able to go up against the spreads. I think you could, if you're just picking games, you could probably do a really good job of being super successful this week, because I mean, just looking at the spreads, if they're this large, it seems to indicate that there's a pretty good indication or inclination that there's a lot of favorites that are going to win this week. So we'll get into all of those. We'll talk a little bit. We'll get into some pretty good depth about the Bucks and Bears, because while it is a larger spread of 12 points, I do think, I'll tell you right now, I think the Bears cover that. I think the Bears cover that fairly easily. And the reason for that is, are they still at 12 right now? Oh, it's moved down to 11.5. Yeah. So I had it at 12 as of this morning. Let's see. What was it at it? Did it change that quickly? Oh, it was -13 as of 9 a.m. this morning. Interesting. Okay. Well, it's already down to 11.5. So people clearly taking the Bears on that particular game. And there's a couple of reasons for that. We'll talk about why. We'll talk about some of these matchups and why some of the lines are as big as they are, even though they probably shouldn't be as big as they are. And then we'll talk about anything that you guys want to talk about. When inactives come out, we will jump on those as well. One of the things that I haven't been able to get to this morning is to be able to just peruse through the injury reports to see how everybody's updated. So we'll go through those specifically as we go through each game as well. So a really exciting slate. Let's see. Let's look at the 1:00 games. I want to look at. So we've got Cincinnati. We've got Cincinnati, Baltimore. Here, let me pull this up. All right. So we've got Cincinnati, Baltimore, right? This one is a really interesting game to me. We talked in depth about it on Thursday. We'll talk in depth about it again today, because I do think that this one's one of the better matchups of the week and one of the more intriguing matchups. Packers, Washington. We'll talk through that one. Probably not spend a whole lot of time. Dolphins, Falcons. That one's kind of a fascinating game, even though it's two teams that most people probably don't care about. Jets, Patriots. Jets coming off of a bye week could make this one interesting, and we'll talk about why. And then Carolina, New York Giants. That one's a little bit of an interesting game because the Giants are trying to climb out of that, like, hey, we're not bad. Morning crossover. Welcome in. Giants are trying to climb out of that hole of saying, hey, we're not bad. We're just kind of bad. Problem is they don't have a good amount of their weapons. And Carolina is trying to say, hey, we are a good team still, even though we've lost a couple of games recently. So they're trying to hang in there. Chiefs Titans, probably the matchup of the day. Chiefs favored by 4.5. I think this one was bigger than it was 5.5 earlier in the week, and it's moving towards the Titans. I think the Buffalo game obviously has a whole lot to do with that. My question is are we overreacting to the Buffalo game? And we'll talk about that a little bit. And then so that's the 1 o'clock game. So really we've got Chiefs Titans, Bengals, Ravens. Those are the two games I'm really interested in. And then I think there's some things to call out about some of the other games. So once we get into the 4 o'clock games, we've got Detroit Rams. I mean, the only interesting thing about this is, can the Rams cover? Do the Rams cover? They absolutely can cover, but do the Rams cover? Philly, Las Vegas. This should be an interesting game. This will tell us, is Philly bad? It's kind of like the Giants thing, right? So is Philly really bad? And it literally just moved from 2.5 to 2. Is Philly really bad? Because we know the Raiders are above average team at this point. Like, we've got to give them credit for what they've done. And then coming out last week and potentially being potentially having the opportunity to lay an egg, and then coming out and just absolutely just coming out full bore, like nothing had ever happened in the previous 2 weeks, and that they hadn't just changed head coaches and offensive coordinator. So this one will be an interesting one for me because I keep paying attention to the Eagles. I can't figure out if they're bad, or if they're middle of the pack, or if they're even like top ish of middle of the pack. It's just so hard right now in the NFC because there's so many good teams in the NFC that even if you're a good team, how are you going to end up squeezing into the wild card whenever you have pretty much the whole NFC West looking like they probably deserve a playoff spot? Then we've got Houston and Arizona, and that one's going to be a massacre waiting to happen. Is there a way for Houston to be able to keep this close? I mean, if they can get the run game going, sure, and we'll talk about a little bit about that. You guys, if you guys have been here very much, you guys know my thoughts on Arizona and how they play on defense. But I've also said this one's an interesting one because I've made a couple of comments about both of these teams that we'll talk about that kind of combine in this one, so it kind of forces me into a particular pick. Then we got Bucks Bears, which has already moved to 11.5. It was 12 as of this morning. Some money going on the Bears. We'll talk in depth about that one and specifically what I'm looking forward to that one. And then we've got Indy and the 49ers. So is Indy for real? They've had 3 really good games over the last few weeks. 49ers, Trey Lance out, Jimmy G in. And what does this particular game look like? I mean, I think this is a big one for Indy to show up in. If Indy shows up here and there's 4 weeks of good stuff on film, I think we have to start considering them as top of the middle of the pack versus still being a bad team. I still think they're a bad team, but I think they've played well in the last 2 to 3 games, and I'm not sure that they're there yet for me. And then finally, Monday night game, New Orleans Saints, Seattle Seahawks. So Seahawks this is in Seattle, which is why I'm surprised that this is plus 4.5 for Seattle. This basically says that the Saints are a 7.5 point favorite on neutral territory. The problem is Geno Smith, right? And there's been talk about Cam Newton. We'll talk about that a little bit, about Cam Newton potentially signing with the Seahawks be interested. Just remember that the media likes to create stories so that they have something to talk about. All right, so that's a quick overview of all the games this week. Interesting slate simply because of the spreads make this, and the spreads could be that that's what's making this feel like it's such a random group of games this week. We'll recap. Let's recap Denver Cleveland real quick, and then we'll get into the rest of the slate of games. As always, exclamation point odds. I set those up as of 9 a.m. this morning, but you can see kind of where we're at as of right now for the games that for most of the games that are going to be played. You've got the ticker at the bottom in case there's any big news that comes up. And then throw any questions in the chat. If you have any questions about teams, fantasy, or otherwise, please throw them in the chat. We'll have a little discussion about it. So let's jump into Denver and Cleveland. So this game was -1.5 Cleveland whenever we started talking about it on Thursday night. Final line moved to -1. We talked about how basically the Browns don't necessarily need Baker Mayfield. Right now, Baker is a great for them to have because he's a solid quarterback, but that's not the offense doesn't go through Baker. The offense goes through the offensive line and that run game, and specifically through the offensive line. There's a reason I mentioned them first because I think you saw that Dearness Johnson had a hell of a night the other night. All credit to him, but man, that offensive line continues to dominate in the run game in pretty much every matchup that they have. So super impressive outing from them. Although we knew that we talked about how Denver's defense wasn't nearly as good as what it was made out to be in preseason, and they were actually even able to throw the ball a little bit. I mean, not a ton, right? It was Case Keenum, but the Browns were able to move the ball, especially off play action and some of those things. There was a decent amount of throws downfield, which in some 20-mile-per-hour winds on Thursday night, which was interesting. But all in all, Denver's just not a very good football team right now. I think they really need Jerry Jeudy back for Teddy to start kind of ramping it up again. I know people said, hey, if Drew Lock is in this game, do they win? And I think the answer is no. I don't think that there's anything. I don't think there's anything that the Broncos could have done in this particular game outside of getting a better run game going to be able to win this one. I think that offensive line up front was just a bad matchup for them. And we talked about it on Thursday that's really all Cleveland needed to be able to take this over in a game where we knew the weather was going to be kind of nasty. So, they ended up taking it. I think we even said, if you watch the YouTube video, said, hey, I like this game at 3.5, probably not interested in it. Interested in taking Cleveland, and sure enough, it finished right at 17-14 was the final score. So we called that one right on the nose. Matchups and everything. So great start to the week because we nailed that one. Let's keep it rolling. Let's get through all of the other ones. So Cincinnati Baltimore. This one is my favorite matchup of the week in terms of scheme and adjustments, and Baltimore continues to kind of be those that game for me every week, or is at least one of, because they do change from week to week. Crossover. I'm so disappointed in Denver's D and Fangio. I think everybody is. I think that Denver D is a little bit of a struggle. They love to play a good amount of zone, and they're not great at getting pressure right now. And Von Miller, like we talked about, Von Miller was the only person getting pressure, and it's not at the level that you would want Von Miller to be getting pressure. Like, Von Miller's not dominating any particular game to this point. So without him, without Chubb on the opposite side being able to rush, they've had to blitz a good amount, and they're just not getting home yet. So it seems like Fangio does a much better job when he has more time to spend focusing on the defense and not being a head coach at the same time. But there'll be more to see there. So yeah, I think it's easy to be disappointed by that defense right now. I think everybody thought that they were going to be pretty solid, especially with the addition of Surtain. They've got to figure something out, or they're going to be falling out of it very, very quickly, especially in an AFC West that looks pretty tough, right? Like one of, if not the best division in the NFL. outside of Denver. At this point, it kind of mirrors that we thought San Francisco was going to be good in the NFC West. The other three teams have proven that they are good, and in the AFC West, it's kind of the same thing. All three teams outside of Denver have proven that they're good, and Denver continues to fade. So yeah, we'll see how it goes, but it's as always. There's always a recency bias in the NFL. What have you done for me lately? And we got to go through and look at specifically what they can fix, and I don't think they're out of it yet. I do think that there's opportunity for them to still turn it around. They need to get Jerry Jeudy back to get that offense going. They've got to figure out some running game because Teddy pushing the ball down the field isn't necessarily the best way for them to win. I don't think. All right, moving on. Cincinnati, Baltimore. So we talked about it a little bit on Thursday. This is the Bengals' offense first test against a really strong defense. And I think this is going to be a test specifically for Zach Taylor and what type of offense can he architect and how well can he call plays today. Because if they're not ready, Baltimore will absolutely steamroll them. And Wink Martindale specifically could potentially have a lot of fun today in bringing the blitz. Now, Joe Burrow, one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL against the blitz, he has some weapons to be able to get rid of it. I think what after looking at it a little bit more, one of the things I realized this week is Baltimore is going to take Jamar Chase away. Just flat out, they're going to put somebody on him. They're going to put a safety over top. He's not going to be able to get open down the field as much as he has in the past. Now, that doesn't mean that there's not one opportunity for during like a scramble drill or something like that. But the schemed up time for him to get downfield probably isn't going to happen as much this game. So they're going to force Tyler Boyd, T. Higgins, and Uzoma to beat them, right? And Joe Mixon to a degree. And I think that's the other thing. I think Joe Mixon potentially plays a very big part in this game, simply because we know that Baltimore is going to bring the blitz. We talked about it. If you're going to compare, um, if you're going to compare a lot of, a lot like if you're going to look at this particular game in terms of matchups, you've got to go back and look at the Raiders game and how the Ravens played them because it's kind of similar. And they brought the house against Derek Carr. And they said, hey, if you're going to beat us, you're going to beat us with guys in your face and you're going to have to get rid of the ball. That could potentially mean a big game for Tyler Boyd, could potentially mean a big game for Uzoma. It's hard to trust Zach Taylor right now. Citrus, you're 100% right. Zero faith in Zach Taylor calling good offense. That's my concern, right? And can Joe Burrow beat both the Ravens defense and also beat his own offensive coordinator? Humphrey versus Chase is going to be a lot of fun. Crossover, yes, it will. I'm curious. I keep saying this, and it seems like teams have moved away from this strategy. But one of the things that teams have done in the past, not specifically Baltimore, but what teams have done is said, hey, we're actually not going to put our best cornerback on the best receiver, especially if it's a vertical guy, like a guy like Jamar Chase who can get deep in a hurry. What they're going to do is they're going to take that cornerback and they're going to put him on the second best guy. And then what they'll do is they'll put their second best cornerback on the main wide receiver. So Jamar Chase, and then they're going to put a safety over top. And they're going to say, hey, you get up in his face, make sure it's hard for him to get off the line. And then we're going to have a safety over top the entire time. And then that job of that safety for that day, just don't get beat deep by that guy. Whatever you do, just don't get beat deep. Like he's going to the cornerback's going to put hands on him, but the safety is going to be playing deep and off the ball and making sure that he doesn't get deep. So I would be curious if the Ravens potentially do something like that. It doesn't feel like it because Chase is clearly the number one, and he's not just a deep threat, right? So Chase is a guy that can run the entire route tree. It's just he stands out on highlight films whenever he's catching 70-yard bombs, right? And whenever he's just run past whoever the cornerback is or was that was supposed to be guarding him. So I think the Bengals have to scheme something up around the blitz. I think it's so obvious that the Ravens are going to bring the blitz, that I do have a little bit of faith in Zach Taylor to figure that out, Citrus. Because I mean, it's what they do, right? Like, they're going to call zero blitzes, and they're going to bring the house against Burrow. If Zach Taylor's not prepared for that, I think it's an absolute atrocity of a game plan, and he will take some heat for not being prepared for that. Now, Burrow, again, one of the best against the blitzes. He's going to have to get rid of it. Joe Mixon slipping out of the backfield. They're going to run some draws and some screens, as a lot of teams like to do against the Ravens defense. On offense, I think the Ravens match up really well against the Bengals. The Bengals have some like, I like Chidobe Awuzie, I like Von Bell. I think they've played pretty well. And I love DJ Reader. And he's probably going to be kind of the like X factor for the Bengals today and being able to get pressure up the middle. The problem is that the Baltimore offensive line, specifically in the run game, has been so successful over the last few weeks. Um, I like the Ravens to be able to move the ball all over the field. And I don't think it's going to take a huge Lamar Jackson passing day for them to be able to do that. So with all that being said, I think this is Baltimore's -6.5, or was -6. Yeah, they're -6.5 still this morning. I don't think I think the Bengals on offense are good enough, and I think it's so obvious that they're going to need to be prepared for the blitz, that Zach Taylor's not going to bomb that test. Um, and I do think Joe Burrow's good enough to manage it. So I'm I'm leaning. I'm gonna take Cincinnati +6.5 here, simply because I do think that they will have the ability to to hang in there, especially on offense. French Pattern, thanks for the follow. Welcome in. Yeah, so I got to take Cincinnati. Um, I got to take Cincinnati. I just feel like that spread is too big. Like, if it was 4.5, 5, something like that, maybe. I feel like this is a game where the Bengals should be able to do it. Now, if they end up having just a massive amount of turnovers, and that's with any game, right? Obviously that's going to sting. I think the Ravens are probably better off on the ground today than they are trying to throw the ball all over the yard. Um, Lamar probably has a big day with his legs. They get the running game going simply because I just don't think that Cincinnati has enough up front to stop them in the run game. When the game is being run like that, it helps keep it closer. 6.5 is a pretty big gap. So I'll take Cincinnati in the 6.5. All right, let's keep it moving. Washington, Green Bay. So we talked about this one a little bit on Thursday, where I think Green Bay has solidified themselves as a defense that is middle of the pack. And it's because they do a few different things. They're good in some areas and they're bad in others, right? So for me, I think the jury is still out totally on where they could be by the time. But they're basically an average defense because they're 16th in pressure. They're middle of the pack with in 14 sacks. They allow 4.5 per carry, which is ninth worst, but they're tied for fourth best in net yards attempt in passing, but they're also 24th in yards after the catch. So like, they're either middle of the pack or wherever they're good at, there's something that negates where they're good at on that particular one. So for me, nothing about this game screams Washington covering for me. Washington, we know Heinicke. We've talked about this. Heinicke isn't the guy. Heinicke, fun to watch, but fun to watch doesn't mean he actually gets it done at the quarterback position. He's fun to watch because he's so volatile. It's kind of like, it's kind of like watching a motorcycle weave in and out of traffic. It's like, oh, that's dangerous. At some point, something bad's gonna happen. Let's keep an eye on this, right? Like, and it may be a beautiful weave through traffic and they get through it just fine. But inevitably, when you play like that, something bad's gonna happen. I mean, he can throw a rope while on one foot, sidearm into the back of the end zone from 30 yards out, and it could be a perfectly good pass, or he could, throw an absolute duck that looks like he was aiming for the linebacker and not for the receiver. So Antonio Gibson looks like he's going to play today. Looks like he's going to be good, which is huge for them because I think without him, Washington's offense really, it really could potentially suffer. So, but it looks like he's going to be good to go. Their offensive line being hurt is obviously a big thing for them. Sam Cosmi is out again today. Is Scherf back in? Is Scherf? Looks like Scherf's good to go. Because with Scherf, it absolutely makes a big difference for them. If he's in the game, because I think he's one of the better guards in the league. Green Bay. The one thing about this is I don't know that Green Bay's offensive line is good enough to stop. Is good enough to stop the front of Washington, and that's going to be one of the big ones. Oh, sure. Is this today? Yeah, Scherf's out. Okay. Cosme's out. Curtis Samuel's out. Scherf's out. Cam Sims is out. Okay. Yeah, there's just nothing about this game that points to Washington for me. I don't think Washington can cover Devontae Adams. I will say I do think that they're going to be better off. I do think that Washington's secondary and the way that they play will be better off than the Bears because the Bears basically just line up in zone and kind of say, hey, we're going to play what we play. Whereas Washington is going to try to mix it up a little bit, and they'll have more of a game plan specific for Devontae Adams because the Bears certainly didn't have that last week. Simsy, welcome in. What do you think? Should I start Christian Kirk or AJ Green? Do you have a better option? I would. The thing for me is I think that obviously I think Arizona is going to have a big week this week. My question is how who scores their touchdowns for them? And I think it's probably going to be mostly Edmonds and Connor, maybe a run in from Kyler. I mean, if you had to, I would probably go. I mean, it's a bad week, right? Because it's a bad week because it's we're right in the middle of James Conner anytime TD as a lock. It certainly feels like a crossover. It feels like it's a bad week simply because I do think that Arizona is going to be able to score at will. It's just I don't think they're gonna drop as many as they can. Again, you got to think about it, right? Like whenever you're looking at these, you've got to look at the matchups. Houston loves to play that cover 2 defense. That to me feels more like the problem is they're not very good at the cover 2 defense. It's supposed to keep everything in front of them, and they leave guys wide open deep all the time. That to me leans Christian Kirk. If they are able to play the cover 2 the way that they should, I think AJ Green is the guy. So I honestly I don't think it's a big difference either way. I think if you're favored in this matchup, Simsy, I think AJ Green is probably the way to go. Christian Kirk probably is the guy that he's the one that could potentially have a big over the top touchdown. I don't know that either guy gets fed that much in this particular game, Simsy. That's a hard call. I would probably go AJ Green just because I'm not as aggressive with it. AJ Green feels more like a guy that's gonna end up giving you a solid day. I even have to start DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams. I had to do that one week. It actually turned out they both got TDs that week, so it actually turned out not bad. But against the Rams, that's not ideal by any means. All right. We'll finish up with Green Bay, Washington. This isn't really a game that interests me that much because I will say that at some point, Washington has to realize whether it's Del Rio or Rivera. Rivera is probably, I will say this, knowing Rivera and the type of guy that he is, he's probably pissed that that his defense is like this. I'm surprised that they haven't done more to switch it up in the secondary to this point, But I would say Rivera is going to start getting involved in this defense sooner rather than later if things don't go their way. And this is probably a game where he's identified he probably wants to get more involved. Um, I just don't know if Rivera has it in him to be a jerk to Jack Del Rio at this point. Like, can he step in and say, "Hey, I need you to step it up, or we're gonna figure something else out." Um, so look for them to try a couple of things, a couple of different things in the secondary, to be able to mix it up. I think they're going to end up moving Landon Collins to linebacker, which they need, by the way. With him and Jamin Davis in at linebacker, I think that's a solid linebacking core. Like, if they both are playing to the best of their ability, I think that's a solid linebacking core. And you've also eliminated a weak spot in the secondary. So there's some things that they can do to mix it up. Bakhtiari's back for Green Bay. So for me, that's a big piece for them this particular week, because I do think that they're going to need help up front. Anybody else that's out? Darnell Savage, Preston Smith, are both questionable. Kevin King questionable. Oh, Bakhtiari is out still. He returned to practice this week, so I thought he was going to play, but it looks like he's been ruled out. So never mind. So there's a shot that Washington could get a good amount of pressure. The problem is that even if they're getting pressure, they're not getting home with it. So this still feels like Green Bay by 12-14 to me. So I'm going to take Green Bay to cover in this one. Green Bay minus, is it 7.5? Did it move? 8.5. All right, I'll still take the 8.5. I would prefer the 8 just to be safe, but obviously. But where else? Atlanta, Miami. So this is an interesting matchup simply because it's two bad teams that neither one has a good offensive line. Neither one has great weapons up front on the defensive line to take advantage of a bad offensive line. I would say Atlanta probably has more consistent playmakers in Cordero Patterson, Calvin Ridley, Kyle Pitts could have another good game this week. I keep talking about Devontae Parker and some of the and Waddle and some of the weapons that I think Miami has. The issue is that Miami just doesn't seem to know how to use them, and also those guys aren't living up to the hype right now. Devontae Parker is questionable. Appears to be facing an uphill battle to play today. Xavier Howard is questionable but expected to play. Byron Jones questionable, but no listing as to whether they think he's going to go or not. And then Preston Lewis. So they've got a good amount of injuries. I mean, I guess it all comes back to Tua, right? Can Tua get it done? And here's the thing about Tua. Tua is very focused on. Should I say focused? Yeah, focused is fine. Focused on the outs and the ups, right? So he's really good at throwing those out routes. I shouldn't say really good at, but he prefers to throw the out routes, and then he prefers to throw it deep. And he's more willing to get rid of the ball quicker than Jacoby Brissett is, but I don't think he does as good of a job of finding the open guy as Brissett does. Brissett needs to see it to be able to pull the trigger. Tua is more willing to let it go. I wouldn't necessarily call it anticipation, but he's more willing to let it go than Brissett is, even in tight windows, which I think is what Miami needs for this offensive line. If Brissett was more willing to throw the ball and pull the trigger, he would be miles better than Tua in this particular offense. Again, I don't believe. Again, we're at the end of the week, and look, no trade, right? No trade for Deshaun Watson. Just as we talk every week and every couple of weeks, it's going to come up. Oh, Deshaun Watson going to get traded. I mean, maybe there's a tiny percentage of a chance that somebody trades for him at the trade deadline. Nobody's trading for him before they absolutely have to. Like what benefit does it for what does it benefit Miami for them to go ahead and trade for him now? They're just going to end up paying him his, whatever it is, his 10 million a year or whatever's left on his 10 million a year for an extra game or two. They're taking on extra salary to have a guy that everybody knows that as soon as he starts to get like somebody wants to put him in and actually leave him active, that the NFL is going to put him on the exempt list. So still, if you're going to do it, it's going to be right before the trade deadline. It's not going to be this week. And Miami's Miami's just not worth it. And that's the thing, right? Is Stephen Ross had talked about he wants to win. He wants to be in a Super Bowl sooner rather than later. They're not even close yet. I thought that Brian Flores did a fantastic job last year of coaching this team to more wins than what they deserved, and I think it's showing. It's the wheels are kind of coming off the wagon at this point, and he doesn't really have a ton of personnel and talent on this roster to be able to keep this going. With Atlanta, on the other hand, I think that this is a team that's going to get a little bit better every week as they go. With a new head coach, Matt Ryan and Arthur Smith figuring it out. They're figuring out how to work around the offensive line. They're figuring out how to get Kyle Pitts involved. They're figuring out how to use a little bit of speed that they have on defense. They're still not going to be able to get pressure on any quarterback whatsoever, though. So to me, this feels like I'm surprised that the Dolphins are the dogs in Miami, but at the same time, I still just don't see Tua overcoming everything that he's got to overcome. And we could talk about like Tua hasn't been given, all of the weapons and all of this stuff, but they've basically catered to everything that Tua. They've changed the offense. They promoted inside guys so that Tua didn't have to change systems. They've tried to give Tua everything that he can. They haven't been very good at it. Don't get me wrong, but they've tried to. And Tua just I've never been in on Tua, and there's nothing about. I try to reevaluate that every week. Like, is there something else that I'm missing? And it's just he is what he is at this point, I feel like. And again, he's a young guy. He doesn't mean he can't be the guy. He can progress, but just not there. Just not there yet. I was leaning Miami this morning, but I just talked myself out of it. I'm going to go Atlanta -2. Because I think Atlanta is just the better team, and I think that last week them kind of figuring out Kyle Pitts, I think Atlanta can beat bad teams. And I don't think Miami has the weapons anywhere to be able to stop them at this point. And if Xavier Howard doesn't go today, Xavier Howard is expected to go today. If Byron Jones doesn't go today, I think that's big because they have nobody to cover. They would probably put one of those corners on Kyle Pitts. All right, Atlanta -2. Let's move on to New York Jets, New England. So the interesting thing about this particular game to me is the Jets coming off of the bye week. So for me, with the Jets coming off the bye week, what changes do they make? Right? It's always hard to predict what a team is going to do after their bye week. For the Jets, it's interesting because with a rookie quarterbacks tend to take a little bit of a jump after their first bye week. It's unfortunate for the Jets that this happened this early in the year. It might actually be fortunate now that I think about it because Zach Wilson was struggling. Like he couldn't see the field. He was trying to do too much. And at some point, he's just got to relax and try not to do as much as what he has been doing. And if they coach him right and are developing him right, which I'm not necessarily he has the right coaches to do that. I'm not sure that he has those type of coaches. Can he begin to start to turn it around? Now, coming out of the bye week and facing Bill Belichick is an issue. He tends to put rookies in blenders because he can mix it up, especially in protections. And with his linebackers, I want to say Wilson comes out and has a better game. I still don't think that the New England defense is that good. I think that they've been able to cover up some spots, which is really kind of the Belichick way, right? Like I think they've been able to cover up some spots that they're weak. They've fully committed to the pass rush. and said, hey, we've got to sell out against the pass rush to be able to protect our cornerbacks, just like we predicted that they would early in the season or before the season. And it's showing up on film week after week. However, they're still able to mix up some of their coverages. They're still able um, to mix up some of their blitz packages up front to be able to get some guys free every once in a while. I do think Judon is the best player probably on the team at this point. Although Hunter Henry's kind of coming out too. So he's played really, really well the last few weeks. So some question marks for sure about New England. They've played basically to the level of their competition all season long. They've played up to the Cowboys and Bucks. They've played down to pretty much everybody else. Except for the Jets. They put a pretty good thump on the Jets. So interested to see how this particular game plays out. I feel like 7 is a heavy line for this game. I feel like 7 is heavy because I don't know. I'm actually curious. Let me look. I want to see what the Jets defensive DVOA against the run specifically is. The Jets are a team that I haven't watched like I haven't gone in depth on their defense specifically. Okay, so they're 17th against the run, 23rd against the pass. I guess if you're thinking about it, they've been down pretty much all season, so teams are probably not running that much against them, which probably helps their defensive DVOA, especially against the run. Yeah, I think this has got to be a Jets cover to me. I don't think New England is as good as they've played in the last few weeks against teams like the Bucks and the Cowboys. I think they came up with very specific game plans to keep those games close. I do think that I will say this. I do think that New England's going to get better as the year goes on, as they figure out how to use the personnel, as Mac Jones gets better, as they figure out how to use Mac Jones, because Josh McDaniels seemed a little bit confused as to what he wanted to do with Mac. When Mac is finally able to start pushing the ball down the field, they're going to be much better. Those wide receivers, Aguilar, Kendrick Bourne, Jacoby Myers. Bourne seems to have ascended into the second role there, by the way. But those receivers, and specifically Hunter Henry has been a huge addition. I know everybody talked about Jonnu Smith being the guy, but Hunter Henry was always the better receiver of the two, as long as he was healthy. The problem is he's just never healthy. So, yeah, I gotta go with the Jets to cover in this particular game. Coming off if they weren't coming off the bye week, I don't think I would be confident in the Jets, but a full 7 points, I think they can hang in there. I think they can cover. I want to look at one thing. What have they done? I just want to look at their margin of loss. I almost said margin of victory. I want to look at their margin of loss to just see where we're at right now. All right. Lost 19-14 to Carolina week 1, 25-6 to New England, 26-0 to Denver. That one looks way worse now. 27-24 win over Tennessee in OT. This is why you can't take 1 week weird stuff happening, right? And again, Tennessee was without AJ Brown and Julio Jones in that game, but still a win of 27-24 in that particular game is interesting. They hung in 27-20 with the Falcons. The Falcons kind of figuring them out. That was a London game too. Man, I guarantee you everybody else is going to be on New England this week. I think after the bye week, I think you have to take into consideration that they've had some extra time to look at this game, and specifically their game earlier against New England. I don't know. I also feel like Belichick's going to have Robert Saleh's number. Everything points, like from a high level, everything points New England. I can't get past the bye week thing with this particular game. I'm gonna stick with Jets +7, and I'm gonna wait and see. I'm gonna wait and see how I feel at the end of this. All right, moving along. Let's go Carolina, New York Giants. So this is another intriguing matchup. So one of the closer spreads of the week. It's only being 3 points, which is interesting. So Carolina is a team that they've played really well, mainly due to their defense over the last few or over most of the season. When they've come up against good teams, they've gotten absolutely smoked. Phil Snow has done a good job of scheming up the defense. They have a smaller front line that is really good at pass rushing, but when you can get the run game going against them, or you have a good offensive line, it's a matchup that other teams can take advantage of. So for this particular game, I don't think the Giants are going to be able to take advantage of that. They're probably going to try. I'm interested to see how they manage Daniel Jones and his runs. I don't think it's going to be an issue. They have fast enough linebackers to be able to track him down. It's not like they're going to be like Washington, who just lets Daniel Jones run free and not even know that they can't tackle him. Um, Giants are banged up. So Giants, want to go look at their full injury report. So I think Slayton's out. Kadarius Toney's out. John Ross is questionable. Sterling Shepard is questionable. Sterling Shepard will go through pregame to test it. Evan Ingram is listed as questionable but expected to play. Slayton is questionable. I thought Slayton was out. Kadarius Toney is out. Danny Shelton is out. Kenny Galladay is out. Aaron Robinson is out. Andrew Thomas is out. Andrew Thomas is on IR now. So, yeah, Giants are not only not good, but they're also pretty banged up and poorly coached. So, Saquon Barkley's out. Yeah, so they really have no weapons on offense right now other than Daniel Jones. And I would love to say, hey, like let's let the progression continue for Daniel Jones, but whenever you don't have a good offensive line and you don't have good weapons, what else are you supposed to do? Um, yeah, there's nothing about this game that points to the Giants for me. I'm surprised that this is this close, to be quite honest. Like I want to take Carolina -3 before I feel like this will move to -3.5. I don't think Carolina's played particularly well over the last few weeks, mainly because they haven't had CMC. But I do think that this is one of those games that they can kind of figure it out. News on Shepard is that pregames. Hey, welcome in, Beaton. I think Slayton is in. News on Shepard is that pregame warmups was short. I mean, honestly, I don't think having both of those guys. So if here's the thing, it would be more important to me if they had a healthy Barkley, and a healthy Andrew Thomas. If they've got if Shepard and Slayton are in, okay, great. Stephon Gilmore is playing this week, so you still have Dante Jackson out there too. So yeah, not a game where it feels like them having extra receivers. Now, um, if Kadarius Toney was out there, I think that would be a big one. But without him and without Slayton or Shepard, it doesn't feel like a particularly great bet. Eileen Dover, nice name. What should I bet my welcome in, by the way? What should I use my 25 risk-free bet on for first TD scorer? In this particular game, Eileen. So as in like Carolina and New York Giants. If I'm doing it, I'm probably doing it as a Carolina player. Um, oh, just in general. That's a good question. I think we said earlier, um, Connor in the Arizona game is probably going to be like it's almost a guarantee that he ends up with a touchdown today, because they're going to score a ton in that particular game, and he is their TD scorer once they get inside the 10. So Connor's probably your best bet. Um, Mike Evans probably actually, yeah, I would say Mike Evans in the Bears game because they're probably going to get inside. Um, for the Bucks, I think the Bucks are going to get inside the 10, and they love to use Evans down there. And Evans without AB is going to be a big one, because they're going to need, and without AB and without Gronk, Evans becomes their best target in the red zone. Thanks for the follow, Eileen. I appreciate that. OJ Howard could have a good day today if he ends up going like today's the problem with having Gronk out is you never know if it's an OJ Howard day or a Cam Brate day. And if Howard isn't fully healthy, it could be a Cam Brate day. So that'll be interesting to see. I would go James Conner. That feels like the best one to me. All right, I'm taking Carolina -3. Carolina does get Stephon Gilmore. Excited to see him play today as he is back off the PUP list, and I believe he's ready to go today. I believe he's in the starting lineup, if I remember correctly. And they have a great secondary, or they have a really solid secondary, solid linebackers, good defensive scheme behind it. I don't see how the Giants score a whole bunch today, and the Carolina offense is good enough to play from ahead. Unless Daniel Jones just has a remarkable day, I don't think this is a game that the Giants can win. So let's take Carolina in the -3. I think that moves to -3.5. And that probably happens after inactives come out. So we'll take a step there and see when that happens. All right, KC Tennessee. This is one of the games I want to spend a little bit of time on, and why I'm kind of getting through some of the other games pretty quickly. KC Tennessee. So we all know Tennessee comes off of a huge win. Over Buffalo. Now, I feel like people are all of a sudden saying KC is amazing, or I'm sorry, Tennessee is amazing because they beat Buffalo. Now, we also know that Tennessee lost to the New York Jets. So we can't overreact to one single week, right? And a lot of people like to do that because recency bias says, "Oh, well, last week they've done this and they changed." Well, that's not the way the NFL works. It's all based on matchups, and that's why we spend Sunday morning going over the specific matchups of each and every game, is because that's what determines outcomes. Your game plan coming into it, your matchups that you can exploit, and how well teams can actually execute on those, and that comes down to both coaching and players. Sexy, good morning, welcome in. For me, this is one of those games where we have to say, hey, we called it against Buffalo that there were specific matchups that they could take advantage of, and they needed to play the game a certain way for them to be able to be successful in that game. They played it exactly as we called it. Just got home from drunk night in Atlanta. Awesome. Are you what were you in Atlanta for, Sexy? So Tennessee played exactly the way that we thought that they should, and they ended up in the position that we thought that they would be, right? So said, hey, if they can run the ball, and Ryan Tannehill playing better than probably what most people realize, is going to be able to throw a little bit here and there. And they're going to be able to score a good amount, at least. They're probably not going to be able to stop the Buffalo offense, but if they can keep it close enough and get and basically have the ball last in the very, very end of the game, then they're going to have a shot to win it on that particular one. Now they get it, they got it, they won it, they got ahead, and then Buffalo marched right back down the field, and Tennessee got a little lucky on the Josh Allen. That was the right call to go for it. That was the right call in terms of the problem is that was more like 1.5 yards to 2 yards, not 1 yard for them. So I was surprised that they went full on sneak there with Josh Allen, but it was still a call that probably could have got them the thing. Now, Josh Allen could have got them the first down or the touchdown. Josh Allen ends up slipping a little bit. Tart ends up getting directly into the hole across the face of his blocker to make sure that even though he did slip, that he was still going down. So we got to take that all with a little bit of a grain of salt. Now, coming into KC, how do they match up? Now, I like Buffalo a lot, but I still think KC's offense is better than Buffalo's. And I don't think Mahomes is going to turn it over a ton in this particular game. I don't think Tennessee can get very much in terms of a pass rush on them. And I think KC, we talked about it a little bit on Thursday. I think KC has a little bit going on in terms of how they're trying to figure out what's wrong with this defense. I think they're starting to make changes, and I think today you're going to start to see that. Now, just loading up the box against Derrick Henry isn't going to get it done. They're going to need to figure out some other stuff. They're going to need to force Ryan Tannehill into some turnovers, and Julio and AJ Brown obviously can get deep and can beat these KC corners deep. Now, Sorensen was benched last week. Curious to see if he ends up coming back out and playing a good amount, or if that's something that kind of sticks. I do think Willie Gay Jr. gets out there a little bit more, and Tyrann Mathieu is basically pissed off all the time in his secondary. So he's going to have to step up because he hasn't really done a ton in the last couple of games either. So this is a tight game to me. Tennessee plus 5.5. I'm surprised that I feel like the general public is overreacting to Tennessee's win last week. However, Vegas doesn't seem to have reacted at all to it with Tennessee at plus 5.5 because it's still almost a full. And has it moved at all? Sorry, I'm looking at my old notes. 4.5 plus 4.5. There we go. So now it's moving towards 4.5, and I think that's based on the betting of the public moving it to 4.5, not necessarily what Vegas thinks is going to happen. Sexy drink watching basketball with girls and friends. Fun. Awesome. Sounds like a good trip. Sounds like a good weekend. Eileen, how many yards for Julio today? Oof. It's a good question. The problem is Julio hasn't looked full Julio, though I think he's looking like he's getting there. I think he has one big catch today. Like, I think either he or AJ Brown have at least one big catch. I'll go 80 yards for Julio today. I think he ends up having a because again, the KC offense, they tend to have want to they play for the negative play, right? They play for trying to get the other offense behind the sticks, creating a HB Joker. What's up? AJ also on a snap count. Oh, I didn't realize that. Yeah, I mean, I think Julio's probably the guy today. I think AJ Brown's probably the worst matchup of the two right now, because I do think AJ's playing better than Julio when he is on the field and not and fully healthy. So yeah, I'll take 80 and a touch for Julio. Is he? Julio was injured, but I thought he was back for today. And that might be why this line didn't change. Yeah, Julio. Expected to play Sunday. He's questionable, but expected to play. Anybody else? Taylor Lewan still out. Chester Rogers out. Nobody else like hugely. I actually think the Titans were better without Taylor Lewan last week. I know he's supposed to be their best offensive tackle, but I think they actually were better without him. Yeah, Jeremy McNichols questionable, Bud Dupree questionable, just like his play. But it looks like they will all probably play. So yeah, so Julio's in. As long as he's fully healthy, I think he has a good game today. AJ actually clarified himself and said he wasn't on a snap count. My bad. Oh, yeah, okay. Got it. Sorry. I was like, wait, what? He is? I hadn't heard that yet. I could imagine if Julio was, because AJ is the one that's healthier. But yeah, so with both of those guys going today, I do think that Tennessee has a shot in this game. KC's defense is obviously the big question. So we talked about it on Thursday. KC is -8 in turnovers, and that's worse than the league. And or I'm sorry, what were they? Yeah, Chiefs are second worst in the NFL at -8. Jags are last at -10. KC has 14 giveaways, which is worse in the league. Jags are at 12. Texans and Pats both have 10 apiece. Takeaways for KC are at 6, which is tied for 8th worst in the NFL. So they've got to be better about not giving the ball away and figuring out those takeaways as well. That's one of the things that the defense relies on, is creating a good amount of turnovers by being aggressive, playing man coverage, and creating negative plays, and they're not getting that on defense. So it's kind of it's a holy trinity of bad things happening for KC right now. And I think a lot of it has to do with a tough schedule, but they have the offense giving the ball away too much, the defense not getting enough takeaways themselves. And then the third thing is Patrick Mahomes is his luck has gone by the wayside. And we talked about it a little bit on Thursday. Like he's living on that floor still, in terms of like his low isn't much lower than what it's been previously. Whenever he's not playing well, or whenever he doesn't have good plays, that floor, it hasn't dropped any from previous years. What hasn't been happening is that ceiling isn't as high as it's been. It's dropped a little bit. So not as many big plays to Kelsey or Hill. They're really missing a third receiver. I know they got Josh Gordon. They're trying to get him going. Today feels like a game where they could potentially try to get McCole Hardman going. And they're going to try to run the ball, I think, as well. You know what? I take that back, because if I'm KC and I'm Andy Reid, I'm saying, dude, I'm attacking the secondary. I'm attacking this entire defense all day long. Let it fly, because you can't keep up with me just by running Derrick Henry. And it's kind of the same thing that we talked about the Bucks. Like, it's fine if you want to run the ball, but by running the ball, you're basically taking the ball out of your best player's hands by doing so for KC and for Tampa Bay. So why not just let it fly and say, hey, you know what? If my defense is going to be bad, let them be bad. But they're good enough to potentially keep teams from scoring 40, and other teams that want to run against this aren't going to be able to keep up. So, Eileen, they need to give Josh Gordon a chance. I think they are slowly factoring him in, right? So, wide receiver is one of the hardest positions. So, like if you're talking about the hardest positions to learn, wide receiver is one of them on offense, because it's basically quarterback wide receiver, because there's so many different things that you have to be able to see and to do. And it's going to be a ramp up time for Josh Gordon. Like, it was never like he's just going to jump back in and everything's going to be fine. He's going to have to learn the offense. He's going to have to learn his alignments and his rotations and his adjustments whenever he's into routes. And that's going to take some time for him and Mahomes. Now, we're talking like 6-8 weeks type of time. Now, you could start to see it in this week, now that they've been together for a couple of weeks, but there's potential there. It's just going to take a while. It's kind of like we talked about with Kyle Pitts. Like, Kyle Pitts coming into the NFL as a rookie tight end, and everybody's like, "Oh my God, he's going to be amazing." And the reality is if you look at the data, it takes a while for tight ends to adjust to the speed of the NFL and to start being productive. And now is about the time whenever you're going to start to see Kyle Pitts kind of be productive. So with Josh Gordon, it's the same thing. I know he's a veteran player, super smart guy whenever it comes to football. However, still going to take him a little bit of time to learn a pretty complicated offense from Andy Reid, because they do a lot of things, and they make a lot of sight adjustments on their routes, right? So Tyreek Hill might have a post, but if he reads that the safety has dropped into the post, he can turn that into a go route. And Mahomes can see that and know that Hill is able to turn that into a go route, and know that if he's got Tyreek Hill one-on-one on the outside and he sees the safety drop into the post, then look up top for Tyreek Hill. And they both have to be on the same page whenever they see that. So it's going to take a little bit of time for Josh Gordon to get involved. Queen Rodham, welcome in. It would be funny if my Cowboys win the NFC East on their bye week today. We're a little bit early to start saying that they're going to. I mean, look, Cowboys are going to win that division. I mean, Philly can't keep up. Like, I mean, there's just nobody. Giants aren't going to keep up. Like, there's just nobody in that division that can challenge them right now. So, yeah, I mean, they're going to win it, but officially not for a while. Queen wrote them. So for this particular game, I gotta go with KC. I know it's in Tennessee. I feel like KC is the better team. I've been saying all along that I'm not scared of KC at all. It's not like I'm not buying into the negativity. I think they've had a brutal schedule up until this point. Tennessee is kind of included in that. At 5.5, I was scared. At 4, I think the Chiefs can do this. I'm going to take KC and the 4 points. I don't see anything on Tennessee's defense that can stop Patrick Mahomes. Love the Bills were able to put up a ton of points, but I think KC is going to be able to put up just as many. And I think even though this sounds really weird, right, is to say that I think KC matches up better against Tennessee than the Bills do. Because I think KC and the way that they play, they're going to invite a lot of negative plays for Tannehill and for this offense, and they're not afraid to load the box and say, "Hey, we're gonna let Tyrann Mathieu freelance and go try to cut some balls off underneath of AJ Brown and Julio Jones." So look for Tannehill not to have as good of a game, even against the defense that people are like, Casey's defense is really bad and Buffalo's defense is really good. That's accurate, but at the same time, the matchups dictate that this is a KC game to me, and I'll take KC -4 over this Tennessee team. Let's see. Sexy, pick one of two to have 100 yards and a TD, Tyreek or Kelsey. I mean, I gotta go Tyreek because this could be a potential game where Tyreek ends up with a couple of bombs. I mean, I think Kelsey probably has a big play and a touchdown too. But yeah, I mean, if you're talking about 100 yards and a TD, it's got to be Tyreek. I think I would take that pretty much every week. Well, I don't know that Kelsey's had a 100-yard receiving game all year. I'm looking this up because I'm curious. Travis Kelce game logs. Oh, he's had a couple. So he had 104, 109, and then he had a 99 as well. Yeah, so, I mean, he's had him in half. So I guess a 50-50 shot. Awesome. Welcome in. Good morning. Oh, you're a Man U fan? Okay. Are you also a Bucks fan? You're just a Glazer fan, I bet, right, Austin? You just love the Glazers, and so you're a Bucks fan and a Man U fan. Austin, I can't repeat that out loud. Dude, remember whenever there was a time whenever people said that the Glazers were just tanking the Bucks and that they weren't very good and that they didn't want to win a Super Bowl and they wouldn't spend the money because they were too busy trying to make money so that they could use the money from the Bucks to fund their Man U obsession. So, I mean, if they're the worst owners in sports, then they are not the worst owners in sports. I don't know the full situation around Man U, but I can't speak to that. I know that they're selling off a lot of their Man U shares. I know that they started that earlier in the year and they're continuing to do so here. So, all right, so we got KC. So we're taking KC minus the 4 points. I think that's at 5.5. I was a little skittish, but I like the KC -4. I think I feel pretty good about that. Okay, fair. They're not the worst. I'm sure there are worse. I mean, yeah, they're definitely worse. Hey, would you rather have Daniel Snyder as your owner? I think we all know the answer to that one. All right, let's go with a quick recap of all the games because we're about halfway through so far, and we got a few extra viewers in today. So, we called the W on Cleveland on Thursday night. We called that game to absolute perfection. Cincinnati, we're taking them plus 6.5. I think I think Baltimore brings a heavy blitz, and I think everybody knows that they're bringing the heavy blitz, and I think because it's so obvious, Zach Taylor knows that he's going to have to plan against it. Burrow plays pretty well against the blitz. I think PFF has him graded as as the best quarterback against the blitz. I think Baltimore's going to going to try to take away Chase. Baltimore's going to be able to run the ball. I think those two things are going to try to keep this a close game. Tyler Boyd's going to have to come up, or Uzoma's going to have to come up with a big game today, or Joe Mixon, or maybe all three. HB Joker Burrow has a 90+ grade against the blitz. Wow, that's impressive. That's impressive. He has to be number one then, right? Yeah, I think that's what I heard is he was number one or number two. So I'm gonna take Cincinnati to cover, but Baltimore to win, because I do think that Baltimore is the better team, but I don't think that Cincy's going to be able to stop them completely on defense. That feels like a game where the last team to have the ball is going to win. Washington, Green Bay minus 8.5. Washington, until Washington can fix that back into their defense, I honestly can't take them, especially against Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams. Would have preferred it at 8, but we'll take the 8.5. 10, because this could be probably a 10-point game. Atlanta, Miami. I'm going to take Atlanta minus 2, even though I feel like I don't foresee a bunch of upsets, but this is one of those games where it could be an upset. I still don't believe in Tua. I don't believe in Tua specifically behind that offensive line. And I think Atlanta's kind of starting to figure it out on offense. So I'm interested to see if that progresses this week. And if Xavier Howard and or Byron Jones doesn't go this week, that's a big deal for Miami. I think it makes it very hard for them to play defense at all against Atlanta. So I'm going to take Atlanta minus 2. Against probably my better judgment, I'm going to take the Jets plus 7. I think the bye week plays into this. I think the bye week is where so there's two reasons. One, I think New England has played to its competition. I think they've done a good job against the Cowboys and the Bucks, but that was a very specific game plan that they were able to use against both of those teams that was very similar. And they did show that they could move the ball a little bit against the Cowboys offense, against the Cowboys defense. I think they can move the ball against the Jets defense. I don't think they use that same game plan. And I also think that the Jets should come out a little bit better on offense. Rookie quarterbacks tend to play a little bit better after the bye week. So I'm gonna take the Jets the plus 7, and hope for the best there. I think that's a tough game to call. Carolina, New York Giants. I'm taking Carolina minus 3. Carolina beats up on bad teams, and the Giants are a bad team, and they're also banged up themselves. If the Giants were fully healthy on the offensive line and they had a good running back right now, I would say that the Giants could potentially cover, but they don't have that. If you're trying to throw against Carolina, bad things are going to happen because that secondary, the front is really good in terms of pass rush. And then the secondary is only going to get better with Stephon Gilmore added to the mix. KC, Tennessee, taking KC minus 4. The reason for that is I do think that they are more willing to open up the offense and go with a big play than what Buffalo was, because Tennessee's defense isn't particularly great. I just think that the matchups dictate that this could be a pretty strong win for KC, because KC's not the type of team to take their foot off the gas like, say, the Bucks or the Bills potentially can at times. So I'm gonna take KC minus 4. All right, moving on. Detroit, LA. We're not gonna spend a lot of time on this. This is the Matt Stafford revenge game on Detroit for them not giving him. I know everybody's talking about the Jared Goff revenge game, but I mean, the Rams probably want to get revenge on Jared Goff for paying him all that money and allowing him to take all of that money while not getting, what they should have out of it. Goff again was bad last week. Like, it was one of the worst games that I've seen him have, if not the worst game I've seen him play in the NFL. He looked lost, did not see open receivers. I thought Anthony Lynn, the offensive coordinator of the Lions, called a perfectly fine game. It wasn't his fault. I just think that there's nothing that the Lions can do in this particular game to be able to keep up with the Rams. Their defense is historically bad, I think. I know they're not rated like worst in DVOA, but I think they should be because they can't rush, they can't cover, they're slow, and they can't tackle. So like there's not a whole lot there to be able to stop the Rams. And then the one thing that the Lions can do to be able to keep games close is to be able to run the ball. The problem is you can't really run the ball against the Rams. They're really strong against the run. Aaron Donald obviously should have a major impact in today's game. If they can't run the ball, they can't really move the offense. The Lions can't. So and I think the Rams have showed that, hey, like they went up against the Cardinals, they got punched in the mouth, and they've been fine ever since. So Stafford is a good fit for this offense. He's not going to be the most precise quarterback, but man, can he sling it. And when guys are open, he can hit them all over the field. So nothing about this game says Detroit should cover to me, unless they just will it. So let's go. We got to take the Rams. Have they moved 16 and a half? Yeah, I'm going to take Rams 16 and a half. It was 15 and a half at 9 a.m. this morning, and I'm still going to take them. Like, this feels like a 3-touchdown game to me. Rams minus 16 and a half. Sorry, I got to make sure to record all these. Eileen, I'm a Rams fan. I live 25 minutes from the stadium. I just don't like the Rams defense. I miss Staley. Yeah, it feels like to me the Rams defense isn't as aggressive as what a lot of people remember from like the Wade Phillips days. Wade Phillips has me blocked on Twitter for some reason. I have no idea why. I thought that was interesting. I don't think I've ever said a bad word about Wade Phillips. I think I've always said good things, and I'm still. So I don't know. I must have made him mad one day. Anyways, yeah, they're not as aggressive as they used to be. They play a good amount of zone. I like Jalen Ramsey. I like Aaron Donald. I like Robert Quinn. Um, sorry, Robert Quinn, not Leonard Floyd. Sorry. Got thrown off there a little bit. So yeah, I like Leonard Floyd. Like I think that they're a solid defense. I mean, there's nothing. The problem is when they run up against really good teams, I think they're going to that really good teams that can scheme. Because let's be honest, the Bucks are a really good offense, but they're not the greatest at scheming things up on offense. They're pretty straightforward. There's a good amount of isolation routes that they do. I think that when teams can scheme it up against the Rams, they're that defense can be beat, which is exactly what Arizona did. Arizona knew exactly how to attack them, and when you can get the running game going against them, then it makes it much harder for them to be able to stick to that zone all day. So, yeah, I think you guys are right. I I think McVay comes out and just wants to throttle the Lions and bring the house against Goff. I think they're going to play Goff just fine. They know what Goff does well and what he doesn't. The weird thing is Goff comes out every once in a while and looks like Joe Montana back there, and he can sling it sometimes. It's like one game a year he comes out and it's like he's throwing darts all over the field. Is today that day? Like, does he get so jacked up today that he's ready to go, or do they end up just, taking him out behind the woodshed, basically? Sexy. I love Tua today. No running game. He'll be passing all day. That may not necessarily be the best thing for Tua. Sexy. I think Tua could potentially run for a good amount today. I don't think that there's anybody on this defense that's going to be able to keep him from running. I just don't know about Tua. If you're throwing 40 times with Tua, he's going to complete 21 passes, and he'll have 280 yards with a touchdown and a pick. Like, I just don't know what you're getting out of Tua at this point, because he's throwing mostly outs and go routes. And I mean, I don't. It's not a way. That doesn't feel like a way for me to win. Super, welcome in. 16.5 is a huge spread, though. It makes me nervous. I feel like this is a game where the Rams are not going to let up. I think the Rams with Jared Goff out there is going to be big. Look what he did to Jax. I mean, it's Urban Meyer. I would trust Arthur Smith and his coaching staff much more than I would Urban Meyer. Like, I don't know. You're sexy. You're just talking to the wrong person, because for me, I'm not a huge Tua fan. So for like, I just don't see it with Tua, and what I've seen on film doesn't change any of that. I think Jacoby Brissett, if he could pull the trigger, would be a much better quarterback for the Miami Dolphins than Tua would be at this point, because he's more willing to deliver the ball into the middle part of the field when he sees it. The problem is he's got to see it before he throws it. So kind of tough. All right, so I'm taking Rams minus 16.5 there. Moving on, Philly Vegas. This is actually one of my more fun matchups as well. So for me, Philly Vegas in Vegas. Vegas was -3. Where are we at here with this one? -2. So it's moved towards the Eagles by a point. So with this particular game, Vegas originally said, "Hey, these are two evenly matched teams." Who in the world believes that the Raiders and the Eagles are evenly matched teams? I don't think anybody believes that right now. Maybe Eagles fans. Sexy, how do you feel? We need to use Miles Sanders today? Yeah, so don't do it. So for me, so everybody knows Sexy is a Eagles fan. He did not have a great night against whenever we sidecasted the Bucks Eagles game on Thursday night a couple of weeks ago. But we love Sexy even though he is an Eagles fan. So for me, I think the Raiders are still an above average team. I think Eagles, if you're looking at them, are middle of the pack at best. I'm surprised that this line is as close as it is, and I just don't understand why. There could still be question marks about the Raiders and their coaching staff, but to me, knowing Rich Bisaccia and knowing Greg Olson and seeing those guys, and by the way, I missed Eileen. Thoughts on Raheem Morris. I'll give those to you in just a second. Sorry, I missed your question. Knowing those guys, what I saw from them last week was exactly what I expected of them, knowing them personally. So I don't have any, I don't have any doubts about what they can do in the Raiders and this coaching staff. On Raheem Morris, I think Raheem Morris has been a lot better as a defensive coordinator now than he ever has been, Eileen. I think he was a product of the John Gruden era, and I think under McVay, he's grown a lot. I think his journey after the Bucks has led him. I didn't like what he did in Atlanta, but he's beginning to change that up. He does have better players now, but he's beginning to adapt his scheme a little bit more to his players, and he's becoming more multiple in what he does. In Atlanta, he just loved to line it up and get after it. And some of the rules that they had on their defense. So for anyone that doesn't know, like whenever offenses can make defenses do what they want them to do, because every defense has a rule for specific things. So, when you're playing, it's kind of like it's based on whatever coverage, right? So if you're playing cover 2 man and the tight end comes, and the tight end they're loaded in a 3-by-1 set, and then the tight end comes from the bunch and goes over and lines up on the line of scrimmage, like that means certain defenses will say, hey, that means that cover 2 safety now becomes down and plays tighter to the line of scrimmage, and they walk him down even though he's still in cover 2. Some defenses will do things like that, or Raheem used to do stuff like that. And I used to listen to Joe Barry and some of the other people and be like, why on earth would you do, if you're in cover 2, just stay in cover 2. Why do you want the safety to walk down over top of the tight end in that particular situation? And defenses have those adjustments that are built into it as rules. And so Raheem used to have a lot of not very smart rules built into his defense that he's now gotten away from. Like his tendencies have changed a lot in those particular things, and he's a little bit more free form, more willing to mix things up. Like he'll move people along the line of scrimmage on defense a lot more than what he used to. He'll flip Leonard Floyd to rush from the right and for the left. He'll put Aaron Donald to rush from the edge instead of from the interior. Like those little things are big in that particular offense. So I think that he's definitely grown a bunch. I think the Cardinals show that he can still be beat. Oh my God, Cardinals have moved to -20. I don't know that I can take the Cardinals anymore. Sorry, I just noticed that. Let's see. Thoughts on Josh Jacobs? I think I love Josh Jacobs as a runner. I think the Oakland defense, the Oakland offensive line is horrible in terms of run blocking, specifically in run blocking. They're much better in terms of pass blocking, but they're not great run blockers. I'm a Carr fan. I think he lights it up with a touch of Josh Jacobs being healthy. What happened to the Cardinals? So the Cardinals were favored by 16.5. I think to start the week, they're already up to -20. That's what happened. That's why I was like, wow, over the Texans, which makes sense. But that -20, that feels like a lot. Right, exactly. Sexy Connor. So on Philly Vegas. So the teams that the Eagles struggle with are teams that can block their defensive line in the pass game and can push the ball deep. And that is exactly what the Raiders can do. They're not great on the offensive line in terms of pass blocking, but they're good enough. And you can attack these corners and these linebackers specifically. I think it's huge, sexy for I think it's huge. I'm just thinking about what this would sound like on a YouTube video. Because I just keep saying sexy all over the time. Sexy is a person in the chat for anybody that comes back and watches this later. And we love sexy. So for me, the Eagles linebackers are pretty awful. And I thought Waller was going to have a huge game, but it sounds like Waller has an ankle injury that popped up on him and may or may not be able to go. It's going to be, if he goes, this could be a 20-point game if Waller goes. If not, I think it's a little bit closer because they lose that kind of security blanket. They're going to lose that security blanket that Derek Carr loves in Waller. So I think they're going to be able to run the ball a little bit. Jacobs, I agree with you, sexy. I think they've got to get Miles Sanders going. I think you saw at the end of that Bucs game that they can get Miles Sanders going, and it doesn't always have to be a run. Like when we talk about running the ball, again, it's not just turn around and hand the ball off. It means get the run game going, which the run game to me is also those like flares and swing passes and the screens to the wide receivers, those short, easy incompletions. Those short, easy incompletions that get chunks of yardage in 3, 4, 5, 6 yards, right? Like those are things that help an offense out to stay on schedule. So for me, that's man. I don't know. I'm gonna take Raiders -2 in this game because I think that it's a bad matchup for the Eagles. I think Jalen Hurts is going to test Cam Hayward, and Cam Hayward's probably going to get him on one because Cam's really good at finding the ball in the air. Hurts is known for not the best ball placement on those deeper routes. So he comes up with a couple every game that's like, wow, what an amazing throw. But he also comes up with a couple every game where it's like, where the hell was that supposed to go? So we'll see. Sexy, I need you to get to Brady today. I don't know what you mean. Eileen, I feel that Hurts and Smith will have a good game. Yeah, it's possible. The thing is I'm looking at the secondary of the Raiders and I'm trying to figure out. So where the Eagles can give teams problems is the speed of their wide receivers. If you're going to play zone, then I think you're going to be okay because Hurts isn't particularly great at throwing into the holes of the zone. He loves the perimeter, right? I think if you saw my retweet this week, out of in terms of using the middle of the field, he's last in the NFL and doing it. He loves the perimeter. So I think they're going to leave the middle of the field open, and they're going to guard the perimeter, and they're going to make it really hard on Hurts to throw where he wants to throw. So I think the Raiders are going to come in prepared. I don't think the Eagles match up very well in personnel or in scheme in this particular game. I'm going to take Raiders -2. Sorry, sexy. Let's see. Eileen, I like Devontae Smith. I think he's just better against a man defense. Because the thing is the Raiders, when they do play zone, they're still going to hit Devontae Smith, and he played bigger than his size in college. You can't really argue that he's played bigger than his size in the NFL. I think when he's had the opportunity to get free off the line of scrimmage, he's had good games, especially against man coverage. But when he has to get physical, it's not his strong suit. Grizz, I like them dudes. Eagles Eagles been outmatched all season, but still looking competent. That's the weird thing. That's what's hard for me to figure out about the Eagles is they continue to be very, very competitive. Now I will say the Bucks, they took their foot off the gas last week, or against the Eagles. Like the Bucks decided that they wanted to run the ball. They've been deciding that they want to run the ball, and it's keeping games closer. And we'll talk about that in Chicago than probably what they should be. But yeah, for me, that's Eagles are a hard team to predict because if Hurts has a good game, it could be huge. Surprise development. Ramondre Stevenson is out for the Pats. Doesn't matter for anything, but interesting. It is interesting because he was the guy that I thought that like he and Damian Harris make a good kind of 1-2 punch. And I thought that Stevenson was going to start stealing some more snaps. So yeah, so let's go. I gotta go Raiders -2. Sorry, sexy. I just think that it's a bad matchup. Houston, Arizona. So this is a game that was 16.5, -16.5. How much? We got hour and 15 to get through 4 games and then a recap. Okay, we're good. We're good on time. This is a game that was -16.5. It's funny. I immediately go to Houston, Arizona, and like 3 people drop. They're like, "Nah, I don't want to listen to this." -20. I think that's the big thing about this particular game is the line is -20. Can you take? So here's the other thing. Arizona -20 is also -2,000 and is +1,000. I just on the money line. This line, right? I would love to know how often a line is at -20 and gets covered, because in the NFL, even though teams get beat by 20, usually those are games where the line was like 7 to 10 points. Like, hey, this team's supposed to get beat by a touchdown or more, but they ended up getting beat by 3 or 4 touchdowns, either through turnovers or whatever it might be. Arizona definitely getting a pick 6. Yeah. Well, and that's really what I kind of thought about this game, sexy, is so for me, last week I made the statement that I would never bet on Davis Mills again, and I would stop underestimating the Cardinals. Those are the 2 things that I said. And I was like, okay, I'm going to stick to these, not realizing that these 2 teams played each other this week. And now I'm going -20. Can I really like take -20? I don't know that I can. But in my head, I keep telling myself, hey, you can't take Davis Mills. You can't, especially against the Cardinals. So what do you guys think? If you had to bet this game, are you taking Arizona -20, or are you taking Houston in the +20? I'm curious because at 15 or 16 or whatever it was, anything less than 18, I was like, hell yeah, let's go. But to me, at 20 now, I'm starting 3 touchdowns. Because at some point Arizona says, hey, you know what, let's just pull back. We'll go with a run. We'll let Connor and Edmonds having it. I ain't touching that bet with a 10-foot pole. Be bold, take the 20. You guys are, yeah. I like the balance in the chat. Like, if it's legit money, I'm not betting this game. I can't bet a 20-point spread because you got to think about it, right? 20 points means that like, not because it's rare that teams don't actually score in the NFL, right? So Houston, and by the way, here's how this game could potentially play out for me, right? And how Houston could potentially cover 20. And we talk about this every week. The best defense is a good run game. It keeps your defense off the field. It keeps them fresh. It's going to allow you to be able to milk the clock and potentially try to keep the game close. So for me, Houston and them being able to run the ball is going to be key for them to cover, right? I don't think it's going to have them win the game, but I think I do think it's something where Chandler Jones is out too, isn't he? He was last week. Let's double check. I would unless Chandler Jones is out. Tanner Vallejo, Devin Kennard, both questionable. Jordan Hicks, questionable. Rashard Lawrence is out. Darrell Daniels is out. Corey Peters is out. Zach Allen is out. Yeah, like they've got a good amount of injuries on their front seven specifically. That's a good call out. Beaton. I'm looking at defense here. Arizona's rush DVOA is 8th. Watt is still playing. That's the big thing, right? And I think this has to be a game where Watt's going to take over, especially against his old team. Crossover. It's weird because the two teams that the Cardinals beat by 20 plus are good teams, Browns and Titans. But when they played the Jags and Titans, they were well below 20. So that's what I'm talking about, right? Like they know against good teams, they've got to keep their foot on the gas. Against bad teams, I could totally see the Cardinals pulling their foot off. Jags and Niners, not Jags, Titans. Yeah. I knew what you meant, crossover. So I think Houston is good enough to cover 20 points. I think they're good enough to cover 20 points. I told myself last week I wouldn't do this. I'm trying to decide not to do this, and I can't help it. I can't. How can I bet on Davis Mills? Yeah, I mean, I feel like they're going to come in and they're going to run Mark Ingram and David Johnson, and the front of Arizona is pretty banged up. And then the other thing that we've talked about is their gap discipline isn't very good. So I feel like Houston can run the ball on them. They tend to stay in the game also. Have they? I mean, I know Houston's lost a lot, but I don't recall what all of their scores were. 37-21, 31-21, 24-9, 40-0 against the Bills, 25-22, 31-3. It's been split. I mean, they've stayed in within 10 to 15. Like, they beat Jacksonville 37-21 the first week. Again, that was Tyrod, not Davis Mills. 31-21 against Cleveland. 24-9 against Carolina. Buffalo was 40-0. 25-22 against New England. That's what I was talking about. New England playing down to their competition. And the other thing is with Houston playing a cover 2 defense, like Kyler, they're probably going to try to run the ball a good amount. Kyler is going to be able to run the ball. Indianapolis put a whopping on them last week, though. God, this one's hard. This one's hard. Like, I can't even just talk about the matchups because I'm just saying, like, we know that Houston's not going to win this. I'm going to call it. I'm going to go Houston and the 20 points. Houston plus 20. Send that out into the universe. I can't. It's so much. Is asking Davis Mills to keep it within 20 really putting your... Yes, HP. Yes, it is. Against this team... Go Glover, welcome in, brother. Hey, I appreciate the sub, my man. Hey, for any of you guys that don't know, Gold Glover is he's a streamer here on Twitch. A good follow on Twitter as well. I will probably drop him in. I will probably drop you guys over into his stream later on after this. Gold Glover, you picked a good day to do it because for me it was today was the day that when Gold likes to stream throughout the afternoon, kind of like a red zone channel, and it's way more interesting than Chris Hansen. So I'll make sure that we drop everybody in. Gold, appreciate the love, appreciate the sub, thank you, man. Yeah, so we're taking Gold. If you had to pick between Houston plus 20 or zone into cover, who are you picking? Hey, Crossover, thank you for the sub. Appreciate it, brother. 2 months in a row. Appreciate it. Hey, you should be working towards that sub badge. I gotta take Houston. I gotta take Houston. I don't, at 20 points, I don't know how you can... It's weird because I'm like, oh yeah, Rams are totally going to cover against Detroit, but Arizona can't cover against Houston. That feels like bad logic to me. It feels like bad logic to me. 20 points is hard to lay. Yeah, they've put the spread so far apart that it actually makes me question it. I'm curious as to how Vegas is betting on this. Right, it's not. Arizona's defense isn't... Look, I love Vance Joseph, but I do think that this team can be run on for Arizona. Let's see. I want to look at one more thing before we move on to this game. Everything in my bones says that Arizona is going to crush it here, but I just cannot take a 20-point line ever. It goes against how I think the NFL is run. I think you'll be safe with the Texans. Are you ever safe with the Texans? They're 31st in offensive DVOA. They're 32nd in pass and 28th in the run. No, I'm sorry. 28th in the pass, 31st in the run. Oh man, their offensive line is bad too. 20 points. Jay Callie, thanks for the follow. Welcome, man. Appreciate it. Thank you guys for the subs, golden crossover. Thanks again, man. I appreciate that guy so much, you guys. Let's see. Yeah, I'm gonna take Houston, and then I'm gonna move on because I want to get to the Chicago Tampa Bay matchup because I think this. I think this is a really interesting matchup, and I think there's a lot of people that are just saying, "Hey, Tampa Bay's like they're way better, and this is going to be an easy game for Tampa Bay." I've seen people and Bucks writers and reporters saying the Bucks should just sit certain players if they're even close, if they're injured at all, because this is going to be an easy game. And here's the thing: there's a couple things about this game that make me nervous for the Bucks, and then there's a couple things about this game that make me nervous for the Bears as well. So one of the things I did this week is I went back and I watched, and I actually did it this morning. I went back and watched last year's game, and because the Bears ended up winning 2019 in Chicago, right? That was the infamous Brady fourth down. He didn't realize it was fourth down, and he had the like confused look on his face and standing out on the field when the game was pretty much over. So for me, it was important for me to go back and see what they did last year that was a big deal. So last year, the Bucks were without AB and Godwin for that game, right? So AB wasn't there yet. Godwin was hurt. So it was a lot of tight ends. Like Tanner Hudson had a few catches. They went very run heavy with Rojo, specifically with Rojo. And the tight ends were the main focus when throwing with Brady. Khalil Mack was dominant last year. He had 2 sacks, 2 tackles for losses, 3 QB hits, and that's including a couple of plays where he absolutely destroyed the line, but then there were penalties that ended up having either sacks or a pass defense taken away for different penalties. The defense gave Brady some problems last year, but being down a few weapons last year, and he's going to have obviously more weapons this year and an improved offensive line from what they were at that point in the year. I think was a big deal. Is going to be a big deal. AB is out today. Yep, ankle injury. AB's out. Gronk is out. So you're going to get either a bunch of OJ Howard, who is a little bit OJ Howard is a little bit banged up, but so this could potentially be a Cameron Brate game. It's OJ Howard has emerged over the last couple of weeks as kind of the leading tight end while Gronk is out, especially in the red zone. I still think Brate is overall a better wide receiver type of tight end than OJ Howard is, but they really seem to be getting OJ Howard more into the game. So, Majin Carlin, thanks very much for the follow. Welcome in. So for me, I think the Bucs are in a better position than they were last year. I will say, so the Bears offense last year was led by Nick Foles, and Nick Foles got the ball out very, very quickly all day long. And I think that's the opposite of what happens for this particular game, because Justin Fields is very much a look for it deep. Like, he's an all or nothing quarterback right now. Foles last year, he couldn't hit anything deep. He was mostly smart with the football. His one interception came on a bobble by the wide receiver. Montgomery had a nice little run for a TD, but he didn't really get much going. He had 10 rushes for 29 yards. Where he was important was he had 7 catches for 30 yards, a couple of them for first downs, or a few of them for first downs. And I think that trend probably happens again this year, because I do think that that's something that they can continue to use. And the other thing is, I keep saying teams can probably run on the Bucs if they do it in a smart way. Nobody has just really tried it yet, right? I think this is a game where the Bears desperately want to be able to run. So I'm curious if they kind of like at least give it a try, or if they choose, like every other team, to not run the ball at all and just say, hey, let's go with the pass. But I don't think they want to put all of that on Fields, right? Like, I don't think you want Fields out there throwing 45 times a game. So the Bears need to figure out a way to protect Fields from Bowles and his blitz packages. And I think that's the big key of the game for me. And that's what scares me the most for the Bears is Todd Bowles versus Justin Fields. It's not necessarily Todd Bowles versus Bill Lazor, who I like Lazor calling the plays better than Nagy. I think they've been a much better offense all around with Lazor calling the plays. But Bowles versus Fields is going to be a problem for the Bears. I just don't see a way that this offensive line, it's a bad combination because Bowles loves to blitz, and he'll blitz from any part of the field, delays, edges, up the middle. He'll sugar the A gaps. He'll have that double A gap look, try to get some guys free by confusing the offensive line, which you can do because the Chicago offensive line isn't very good. And then Justin Fields is also really bad at IDing protections and IDing blitzes and where they're coming from. Like, he's better at seeing the secondary than he is the line in front of him. And that's okay as a rookie, but he's got to be better than that. Like, it's a fatal flaw for him right now. And Bowles is going to test the daylights out of that. So if they can't figure out how to get around that front, specifically the JPP may or may not go today. Probably not, because this is a game where, like I said, there are people saying that he's going to sit just because the Bucs think that they can sit him. So if JPP doesn't go, then that means Tryon Shoyinka is going to get more clock, which is fine because he's probably a stronger pass rusher at this point, but doesn't set the edge on the line as well. He's just a little bit overly aggressive. If you can run away from Vita Vea, you're going to be just fine. And Dominican Sue should have a good game today in the middle and at defensive end. So it's tough. Shaq Barrett's going to have an interesting day out on the tackles. I I don't see how up front the Bears are going to be able to block these guys. So they're going to have to scheme their way around it. They're going to have some swings, some screens, some draw plays, some smoke routes out to the edges. Like that to me is where they're going to have to play pretty much the entire game. And if they do want to take some shots down the field, they have extra protection. And I'm not just talking about leaving a running back in the backfield, because the Bucks are really good at getting around those running backs. They've got to have a running back that's willing to get in the hole and make the block, not just try to hang it up there, because Fields is gonna end up running, and the Bucks run enough zone that they're gonna keep their eyes on the running back. So it's not like Fields is gonna have all day to run. He's probably gonna have his times, but it's not like this is gonna be his number one rushing game of the year either. Thoughts on Lenny Godwin Evans? Sexy. I think Evans probably becomes I like Johnson for at corner for the Bears. I don't know that he's a great fit to cover Evans. Godwin is probably the guy that ends up having a big day today to me. And then I also think that this is a game where the Bucks say, "Hey, I want to run," because that's what they tried to do last year. They tried to do it with Rojo, and Rojo actually had a pretty solid game last year. But it also negated a bunch of their offense of what they could have had. So, but also Khalil Mack was pretty dominant. Like the Bucks were leading 19-17 on the Bears next to last drive, and they had the Bears stopped on third down. There was a questionable roughing the passer call on Barrett that extended the drive. Jamel Dean almost picked one off, and then Foles was hit as he threw, and a duck popped up, and the Bucks just almost picked it off, but barely missed it. And then the Bucks went 3 and out. Foles gets the ball back at his own 48, moves the ball into Bears field goal, or into field goal range for the Bears. Which, by the way, I noticed this they didn't play for the deep field goal. Like they had a little over 2 minutes when they got the ball back. They played through the 40 down into the 20 to kick the field goal, and they got the field goal, which I think was incredibly smart by Nagy to do. You may never hear me say something about Nagy that nice again, but they did what they should have done in that situation to make it 20-19, and then that's when Brady had his epic fourth down. Like neither one of these teams was moving the ball very well last year against the other. And it's clear that the Bucks defense isn't as strong as it was last year. But I think Fields is going to be an upgrade over Foles. The problem is they're different types of quarterbacks. So Fields is going to have to be much more conservative with the football, get rid of it faster, be smart with the football, and they're going to have to help him out with the game plan. So I'm interested to see how Laser does that. The Bears do like to use, is that right? Yeah, that's not right. That must be a note for a different game. So the Bucks really like to try to get the running game going. They tried it against the Eagles. They pulled their foot off the gas a little bit against the Eagles, and I think that's what ended up causing them to be a lot closer in that Eagles game. And it feels like this is another game where they're going to do that. I know that the Bucks, they opened it up against Miami. They pulled back against Philly. Like Leftwich can't help but want to try to run the ball, and he continues to slow down the offense by trying to run the ball. And it feels like this might particularly be a game, especially with Khalil Mack, where he's going to try to do that again. And because of the type of defense that the Bears like to play. Husky, welcome in. Husky also games. Hello from the Netherlands. Learning about the game. This seems like a cool place to hang out. Fields just needs more time in the pocket because of his experience, especially with the amount of runners down. The Bucks won't be that worried about the run, I think. Yeah, so Husky, welcome in. Thanks. It's awesome that you're tuning in from the Netherlands. I think that's awesome to see kind of the reach that we're able to get. Appreciate the nice comments as well. Flattery will get you everywhere in this chat. Um, Fields does need more time in the pocket. So we've talked about this on previous shows, right? So a lot of the quote unquote running quarterbacks that come into the NFL, basically guys that are super athletic at the running back or at the quarterback position, they tend to have less anticipation and less understanding mentally of the pass game because they haven't had to develop that, simply because they've always been able to make one or two reads and then just take off, and their legs have been able to bail them out of situations. Are we back? We're back. Sorry about that. I have a new uh, microphone cord coming in, so it's cut out. It's cut out before. So he's always been able to bail himself out of a situation because of his legs, right? It's it's weird. I got this mic because it was supposed to be fantastic, and it is. It's a great mic, but it points away, and I think it's supposed to be for like a tripod. Like you're supposed to have it on like a tripod in front of you, and so the cord points away from you instead of like an actual right-handed low profile cord that is able to be used with an arm. But anyways, so yeah, so he's been able to bail himself out with his legs, and he's never had to develop that like mental processing in the passing game. He's a terrific thrower. If he gets time to throw downfield, he's probably going to have a big play to Daryl Mooney today. I would highly suspect. Cole Kmet is a guy that they really need to get going. I think David Montgomery could potentially have a big game both in the pass game and in the run game because they're going to need it. They're going to need some shorter completions and some longer drives to keep the Bucks off the field. And I think that's the way they want to play this game. And I think the Bucks are going to help them out by playing into it by running Lenny Fournette a good amount. So I don't like the idea of the Bucks of Todd Bowles against Fields for Fields and for the Bears. Like that's a bad matchup for them. And I think they know that. I think they know that they don't want to leave Fields out to dry against the Todd Bowles defense because it can be very, very complicated. I just don't know that the Bears have enough on offense to be able to get it done. I do think the defense could potentially cause some problems for the Bucks a little bit here and there. Brady's going to be much better off this year, I think, because he's going to have a much better idea of what they're trying to do. And I don't suspect that Khalil Mack is going to be able to dominate Wirfs and Donovan Smith like he did last year. So those things point to the Bucks having a good game. I think the Bucks take their foot off the gas and allow the Bears to cover again. And if this were like 8-9 points, I would say, hey, Bucks have got it. But at 12 points is what we had them this morning. Like I'm taking Chicago and the -12 right now because I think that's more on the Bucks than it is on the Bears. I think they're gonna relax a little bit and they're gonna let this game be a little bit closer than what it should be. If the Bucks playing off coverage, they might get got. I mean, absolutely. The problem is they don't have enough. They just don't have enough cornerbacks to be able to keep up with guys like Mooney. And I think Mooney does a really good job in zone coverage of finding the open spot on the field. and getting himself wide open. It's just, can Justin Fields consistently find him, consistently see that and find him. So I like the Bucks to win probably fairly easily. But I don't think that they cover the 12. And again, I think that's the Bucks more than anything. All right. Who was that? Sexy, you said, did we talk about Packers today? Yes. Yes, we talked about Packers already. I will I can recap that one. Dean is very linear in his game. Yeah. Dean was the one, I think it was Jamel Dean was the one that had the pick last year, if I remember correctly. Husky also games, I think they will counter hard with the pass rush. I'm not sure how the overextended knee healed, but I'm afraid Fields hasn't recovered mentally. I mean, Fields has played football for a while, right? And again, there's a big difference in playing football at Ohio State and just having much better players than everybody else. Um, and just being able to wait for a guy to get open. He's still learning. And he hasn't been catastrophically bad. Last week wasn't great, but he has been catastrophically bad. And I think he's played a few different types of teams at this point. So I do think that there's an opportunity that he has this week to play into what he would like to play and what they think what they think he can do. All right. I want to see Fields succeed. I don't want to see him succeed against the Bucks, but I do want to see Fields succeed because I do think that watching him throw, man, his ability to throw the ball is incredible. He's got to gain his confidence because there's a lot of times where he just doesn't put everything into the throw. And whenever he doubts himself, the throws just aren't as crisp, aren't as clean. And I think he's got to get out of that. All right, let's move on. Let's get to let's see, what do we got? 12:15. We should be right on time. Maybe even a little bit early today. Weird. Oh, I guess we do have a smaller slate of games. So we'll go through the last two games. We got Indy, San Francisco, New Orleans, Seattle, and then we'll go through the recap of everything that we've talked about today, and all the final picks. Indy, San Francisco. So Indy is a team that is trending up. Of course, Husky. Welcome in. Thanks. Appreciate the chat and the questions. Feel free to keep them coming. We'll talk about anything you guys want to talk about. Indy is a team that's trending up, right? So last 3 weeks, huge for them. Specifically, Carson Wentz has he's blown me away after going back and watching a little bit more of Wentz and how he's played. I think more than Wentz, what I'm impressed with is Frank Reich, because he seems to be in a flow of play calling and scheming that is, like, we talk about how quarterbacks can get hot and get on a streak. I think right now Frank Reich is on a streak of terrific play calling. Like, he knows what he needs to do and wants to do in every single game. And I think he has been spot on with everything that he's been doing so far in the last 3 games. So for me, I'm still not a huge believer in Indy overall. I think they're probably a middle of the pack team, but I think they're middle of the pack. I think the defense has gotten a little bit better. The offense has played much better. They've gotten the run game going, which I think is huge for Carson Wentz. In this particular game against San Francisco, I still don't know what San Francisco is yet. Jimmy G is playing today, not Lance. Lance is out with a knee injury. And I think a little bit of time off and a little bit of a reset could potentially be good for San Francisco. And I think that this is it's an interesting matchup between San Francisco's offense and Indy's defense, because Indy has a smaller defense that plays fast, right? Like, they're not concerned about size. They're more interested in players who can move around the field very quickly. The problem with that is that, one, they can get run over pretty easily. And two, if a player is fast, if he doesn't know where he's going, that just means that he gets himself out of position even faster. Right. So if it's a slow guy, but he knows what he's doing, then he knows where he needs to go. He just can't get there quick enough. with a fast guy that doesn't that misreads something, he's really fast to get where he needs to go. The problem is that's not the right spot, which means he's now out of position for whatever else is happening. So that's an interesting matchup because if Indy is keyed in on what San Francisco wants to do today, they have the defense to be able to defend this. Much like Arizona, actually. Arizona is very fast on defense. They have more size, and I would say they're better coached. But for me, it feels like this is a game where Indy is going to come in and Shanahan's going to use their speed against them. This feels like the typical Shanahan comes in. He's like, "Oh, I got this one." I like. There are certain times when Shanahan calls a game, and you're like, "Okay, he's just doing what he thinks he needs to do, and it doesn't always work out." I think in this particular game, I think San Francisco comes in and Shanahan just lights up this defense. Now, the problem is it's there's been a little bit of issues with Jimmy G's been some issues with Jimmy G and his offense and his ability to run this offense and being on point because he's had open throws. He's just missed them. And the whole offense has felt out of sync. Now, I will say that they haven't really had the best in terms of a running game because their running backs have been hurt. So it's not the running game that you would expect out of the Kyle Shanahan offense. So I think for me, I think San Francisco, I recent evidence suggests that I should not have any faith in Jimmy G. However, historical evidence says I believe that Jimmy G is going to figure it out at some point. And if he doesn't figure it out this week, all right, I'm done. Like I'm just going to be out on Jimmy G. So I'm going to give the lean towards San Francisco in terms of their offense to defensive matchup. Indy on offense, I like their ability to be able to move the ball. I'm surprised. This is interesting because it's a 4.5 line for San Francisco. I'm looking at my old notes. Let me make sure. So it's 3.5 for San Francisco. And the over-under is 42, which I think is the lowest of the week. Yeah. And what was the Cleveland Denver game was 40. So outside of the Thursday night game, this is the lowest total of the week. So they're saying that this is going to be a defensive game, not a whole lot of. Now that's basically how San Francisco's games have gone, right? Like, if I go back and look, I want to see, because I remember against Philly, they couldn't get it going in the first half. That ended up being a very slow game. So they went 41-33 week 1, 17-11 against Philly. No, they put up some points. I mean, against Green Bay and Seattle, those are higher scoring games. Against Arizona, it was 17-10, but that was with Trey Lance in. So, yeah, I got to go with the over here because I don't think that this is going to be I think this is going to be an offensive game, not a defensive game. And I rarely pick the over or under on or the total on any games, but I feel like 42 in this one is pretty low. And then I think that Indy's going to be able to move the ball as well. I think they're going to be able to run. I think they're going to be able to pass. I will say, San Francisco has pass rushers on the edge that could potentially cause Carson Wentz problems without them having to blitz. So this could potentially be one of those games where we see the Carson Wentz that I've always expected to see, not the Carson Wentz of the last three weeks. So let's see. I think they'll counter hard with pass rush. Oh, sorry, that was on the last game. I want to see what the offense develops with Lance. They got the weapons, but Jimmy isn't very dependable. May as well use the games to get your new rookie some snaps, maybe more like Breeze Hill sort of a tag team. So Lance is out with a knee injury this week, so he's not even available for spot duty. It's just going to be Jimmy Garoppolo this week. So crossover weather might be brutal in San Francisco. I haven't seen the weather. That's something I need to get. Need to get better on. 6 miles per hour now. Is it supposed to get worse later or something? Crossover? I haven't looked at it. What happens with the Colts defense? They used to be pretty good last season. So they were. To me, they were well coached. after going back and looking at it, I think they were very fortunate. I think they had a lot of luck last year. Um, in that they had some players that were just kind of in the right spot at the right time, and they're probably not as good as what they looked last year. But they are also coming around a bit this year too. So I think they're number one overall in rushing DVOA, and let me see. I think they were number one overall in rushing DVOA, but they're horrible against the pass, if I remember correctly. Yeah, still number one, and then they're number one in rushing DVOA, 29th in pass DVOA. And I think that's just they had really good safety play last year. They were better tackling last year, which is a big deal. So I think that I think those are the two biggest things. I just don't. I also think that they were super fortunate. So in the pass game last year to get some turnovers that they probably didn't deserve. So yeah, so I think they're going to be okay. This year in terms of down the stretch, they're going to be okay. They're probably going to be middle of the pack, but I just don't think that this is a game. I was surprised that San Francisco was -4.5 when this line opened, or earlier in the week, and now it's down to 3.5. And I'm going to take San Francisco. Everybody's going to be on Indy because recency bias, and their most recent game says that hey, they're a good team. It's not like they played well against Baltimore, and I think that's what everybody is falling back on. And don't get me wrong, like I said, Carson Wentz has played very, very well. Problem is I just don't think that I don't think it's sustainable. They've played Miami. They beat Miami 27-17. They beat Houston 31-3. Okay, great. Baltimore, they held in there 31-25 in OT and lost. But I don't. I think we've got to look at the schedule. When they've played decent teams in Seattle, Los Angeles, Tennessee, they haven't played well and they've gotten beat. But then they go out and they beat Miami and Houston, and then they hang around with Baltimore. I get why people are saying it. I'm still just not there yet. If Indy comes out and puts it on San Francisco tonight, then absolutely, I will throw in my chips and say, hey, I think Indy has a chance to be a good team. Until I see that game tonight and see what they do, I don't know. I'm still not there yet. I'm gonna look at San Francisco weather real quick. Crossover, you got me thinking. Thoughts on Joe Mixon and Jamar Chase again? I see them both having good games. Yes, on Joe Mixon, I don't think Jamar Chase has a good game today. I think that's the one thing that Baltimore identifies as the one thing that they can't let beat them. And I think Marlon Humphreys on Jamar Chase is an interesting matchup. I'm curious to see if they take Humphreys and put him on somebody else, and then they take their second corner and put him on Chase, and then bring a safety over top and just rotate the coverage to whichever side Jamar is on. Like that feels like a Wink Martindale type of thing that they would do, though it's not something that they've done often. So yeah, we'll see. I do think Joe Mixon he's got to get a good game today, especially in the pass game, for them to have a shot. Yeah, to me, it's got to be Higgins, Boyd, or Uzoma, right? Like sexy. Like to me, it feels more of like a Boyd or a because they'll move Boyd into the slot. Like it feels more like a Boyd or Uzoma. I feel like Uzoma's got to have a really good game for them today, for them to have a shot, or Joe Mixon just dominates for some reason. But I don't know that the offensive line is good enough. All right, Sunday. Hourly weather forecast for San Fran. I want to see. Rain and wind right now. So 9:15. Let's see. What time's the game? Yeah, so it'll be rainy and windy tonight at 18 miles an hour. Okay. Interesting. That makes it a little bit different. Because Indy's run game the last few weeks has been phenomenal. San Francisco's hasn't been as good as what you would think. I could totally see this being a closer game. Um, I still got to take I still think San Francisco's better though. Yeah, I still think San Francisco's better. I gotta go. I just can't pick Indy yet. I'm still not there on Indy. Hope Kitty ghosts me out today. um, yeah, let's see. Yeah, okay. I'm going San Francisco -4.5 or 3.5, even with the weather. I'm not bought in. I'm not bought in on Indy yet, and I understand why. I understand why people are bought in on Indy. I can't get there yet. I need more evidence. I'm the old man that like you got to show me more to be as progressive as everybody else whenever it comes to some of these teams. I just haven't seen enough from them yet. All right, final game of the week. Monday Night Football, New Orleans, Seattle. This should be an interesting game. Sorry, excuse me. This should be an interesting game. We'll talk through this and then we'll go through all of the games. Any last questions that you guys have before the 1:00 kickoff gets going? Might even be able to get you guys out of here like 5 minutes early. I sound like I'm in a freaking like office meeting. Oh, I'll give you 5 minutes back of your time. Corporate life has ruined me. Husky, I've also been amazed at Fournette running over linemen since he played at the Jags. Don't know Harris that well, but I know he jumps the pylon very well. If Husky, that's actually a good question. I would say Damian Harris. I feel like Fournette's gonna get it's ruined everyone. Yes, it has, Grizz. I would probably go Damian Harris over Fournette simply because there's a potential that Fournette gets the ball in the first half, and if the Bucs happen to be up in the second half, Rojo may take over. And Damian Harris probably doesn't have that issue. And they're playing the Jets, which is always good. New Orleans, Seattle. Monday night game. Hey, by the way, reminder, the Mannings return on ESPN2 this week. The Mannings are back, so no more having to watch it on normal ESPN. How come Jones no longer runs as he did last year? He's Husky. He's what we call in the doghouse. So for those of you that don't know, so one of the things that I learned in when we did the international series game in London, I remember sitting with some of the teams and or sitting with some of the players, and our PR guys came over and they went to grab, I forget who it was. I think it might have been Jeff Fain or one of the offensive linemen, and said, "Hey, like we need somebody to do an interview. Can you come help?" And he's like, "Yeah, sure." And they're like, "Okay, well, here's what you need to know about interviews over here in London." So our sayings, our idioms, they don't translate, right? Like they don't know what some of these things, like we'll say things and people will be like, "What? I don't understand what that means." So stuff like, what did I just say? Like in the doghouse, like that, they don't know what in the dog. Anybody outside of America doesn't typically know what in the doghouse means. They don't understand where that comes from or what specifically it means. And so I just remember them telling the offensive lineman, like, don't use these things. And so of course the offensive lineman goes in the interview and they were just like recording it outside of the hotel for some reason. And he immediately just goes into saying all of the idioms that he absolutely, like all of the sayings that he could. And he was like, we can't just go out there and throw the ball all the time. Well, that dog won't hunt. We got to get out there and we got to really give it to him. Like he just starts going through all of the idioms that he can, and the reporter, just a confused look on her poor face. And so for me, like whenever I know that I've got people internationally in the chat, I got to get away from using stuff like that. So Rojo has been benched effectively because he hasn't been playing very well. Rojo's fumbled. He's missed a good amount of pass blocking assignments. He can't catch the ball. Like being able to catch the ball is a big piece of this offense right now and going forward. And so he's basically been benched. Lenny Fournette has been the best running back out of the group by a large margin. He's been much better catching the ball. He's been solid in running the ball, and he's the best. He's been phenomenal in pass blocking so far this year. So Rojo is the clear backup, with Giovanni Bernard being the third down running back in Tampa Bay. So that's why Rojo's not there. So Rojo's there. He's the second running back. He's not inactive or anything like that. He's getting less use because Lenny Fournette has become the number one back, and he's getting all of the snaps and all of the carries. And Bruce Arians has said it that he thinks that Rojo is a better runner of the football, but Lenny is just doing everything else better right now. And you can't have a liability in there that could potentially fumble the ball, and can't pass block right now. They need more than that from the running back position. All right, Evan Ingram is in today. Devontae Parker not suiting up. Sterling Shepard is out today. Antonio Gibson is playing today per the line at the bottom. Final game of the week, New Orleans, Seattle. So it's an odd week, which means it's a good week for New Orleans because they've literally been good on odd weeks and bad on even weeks. That doesn't actually mean anything, but it is a trend that is happening with the Saints right now. The Saints are trying to figure out who they are and what their identity is. The good thing is that they are starting to get healthy while doing so. Because they're getting healthy specifically on defense, I think that this is going to be a really interesting game. I think the defense is going to emerge as one of the better defenses once they do get healthy. They've got to figure out what their identity on offense is, and they're still trying to figure that out because they know that they want to run the ball with Kamara. They haven't figured out how they want to utilize Winston yet, and I think it's kind of come into focus a little bit, but they're still not there. Because with the Saints, they've shown that they want to try to keep Winston under wraps, but at the same time, they figured out that he's best when he's stretching the field, and they need to let him do that at times. They just want to try to manage when he's doing that, I think. So, and with Seattle, the defense isn't good at all. They can't really get a pass rush. The linebackers aren't great. The coverage isn't terrific. Grizz still riding with Geno. I mean, Geno looks all right. Right now, I mean, to me, what has stood out with Geno is Russ is so much better at manipulating the pocket and escaping when he needs to, that with Geno in, it showed how bad this line is at pass blocking. I think they're much, much better at run blocking. Stretching the field. So stretching the field, like throwing deeper, right? So throwing the ball farther downfield, because Winston has been very good at that. While he wasn't very good at that in Tampa Bay, he would throw it deep downfield. He just couldn't throw it to anybody. Yes, deep threats. So in New Orleans, pretty much every throw downfield has been on the money. And so with Seattle, Russ and his ability to manage the pocket and then escape the pocket has shown up and has shown that the Seattle offensive line is benefited by Russ being in there. And it's not just because Russ is athletic, because Geno's athletic enough. It's just the pocket manipulation is different, and the intelligence in the pocket and the ability to manage around the pass rush has been huge for Russ. And so with Geno, he's been under a lot more pressure. It's not like the teams that Geno has faced have been that much better in terms of the pass rush. When we're comparing the two. So it's not like Geno's just faced tougher teams or tougher competition in that particular area. So I still like Geno as a passer. I think he's done pretty well so far as a passer. They've got to do a better job of blocking for him, or he's got to figure out when he needs to break containment or get rid of the ball a little bit sooner. Like, he's got to figure that out. Alex Collins has been phenomenal in running the ball. That's something that I don't think they're going to be able to do. New Orleans is very, very good at stopping the run game. Is Onyemata back? Onyemata back is no. He's suspended for 6 games, right? So not 6 weeks, and they had a bye weeks in there. So Onyemata is not back yet. But the defense is getting healthy. Let me take one more peek at their injury report to make sure there's nothing I'm missing. Still, yeah. So their whole injury report is either everybody's out or everybody's on injured reserve. So Michael Thomas still out. Taysom Hill is out. Deontay Harris, that one stings that he's out. Peyton Turner out, and Dwayne Washington out. Deontay Harris being out hurts. That means Marquez Callaway could have a big week this week. I do think that this is a good week for them to take some shots against that Seattle cover 3, as well as to use the middle of the field, which Winston is not afraid to do. I was surprised to see that New Orleans was favored by 4.5, but that's mostly due to Geno. And I do think that this defense is good enough to stop the Seattle offense in a multitude of ways. So I could totally see the Saints ending up with a huge game here. This would be the job of a wideout, but I don't think the Saints have a real deep threat at the moment. Better let Kamara do his rushing. I mean, Seahawks one trick is the deep threat. So, it's both Husky. It's both the job of the wide receiver, the quarterback, and the offensive coordinator calling the plays to stretch the field, right? And to make it for deep plays. Because if you don't call the plays for receivers to run deep, then you're never going to be able to throw deep. The wide receiver has to be able to get open deep, right? And if they can't get open deep, or at least get some sort of separation in a one-on-one matchup that a quarterback wants to throw them the ball, but it also comes down to a quarterback being willing to throw the ball deep. And one of the big criticisms of Derek Carr last year was he liked to throw the ball short. Those little screen games and dump offs and short throws behind the line of scrimmage. And now this year he's being much more aggressive and throwing the ball downfield when he's got basically the same weapons. So in the same offense. So it's really as much up to the quarterback as anybody to take those shots. They sure do. Adams has been taking some beatings this season, though. Got to keep the man healthy. Yep. Not a fan of Aaron Jones, but he can have a great game too. Jameis has a knack for getting guys the ball who are nobodies. Jameis isn't afraid to throw to anybody. I think the thing I'm interested to see this week is Alex Collins. Really interested in Alex Collins this week. I don't think they're able to get the game going, the run game going. I think I gotta lean Saints here, man. Of course, if Jameis turns into old Jameis, of course Seattle can win. 4.5 feels like a lot. I feel like this game's gonna get closer. I feel like if we take 4.5 now, it'll probably be 4 or maybe even 3.5 by the time game time comes around. But with Geno in, I just don't know. They just don't seem great. Why hasn't Lazard or Tanyan gotten the ball anymore as last year? It really depends on matchup, sexy, right? There was what was it? There was the Monday night game where Tanyan was targeted a few. So everybody talks about how good Tanyan was last year. The reality is Tanyan had like 3 or 4 really big games, but then in all the other ones, he wasn't really a huge factor in the game. And so for me, it was coming into this year, everybody was like, oh, Tanyan's going to be amazing. Tanyan's going to be fantastic. He was not that last year, whenever you go back and look at it. So not surprised that Tanyan's not a huge target. Plus, whenever Devontae Adams is playing out of his mind, it's hard not to. as far as Lazard, I just don't. Lazard hasn't. It feels like Lazard hasn't gotten open. And he's not a guy that Rodgers has trusted in a lot of situations. I mean, he lobbied for them to get Cobb back. I think their offense runs through the run game and then Devontae Adams, and then the run game and then Randall Cobb. And for that offense, that's all Aaron Rodgers feels like he needs. And he doesn't typically want to go outside of those guys. Now, if there's a matchup that dictates it, sure. But I don't know that Rodgers is ever really looking for that outside. Because when you've got Devontae Adams, you just let him get 60% of the targets. And then from there, from outside of those three, there probably aren't a ton of opportunities to go around in that particular offense. Remember this, from what I've read, Giants use a ton of zone. So I had a ton of Thielen last week. Knowing that fact, it's probably a DJ Moore week, but also could be Robbie. Personally, I'm locking in on Pettis or one more DJ and Robbie. I mean, I'm always going to go DJ Moore over Robbie. I just think that DJ Moore is a much better receiver. I think that they need DJ Moore. I keep saying they need to get DJ Moore back into the CMC role. For me, DJ Moore into the CMC role is highly advantageous for them, and it's a role that he can play. They just need to let him do that. Adams is a dog, and the other guys are just guys. Yeah, yeah. Randall Cobb's played pretty well, I think. Randall Cobb's been a big weapon on third down for them. But Adams is the best receiver in the NFL right now. It doesn't really matter what teams do against him. He still continues to put up huge games. Tanyans gets the Rodgers treatment in the red zone. Yeah, I think that's whenever they really kind of like go to Tanyan. I don't think Tanyan's the type of guy that is gonna blow the top off of a defense or have huge games in terms of like lots of catches and lots of yards, but you may get 3 for 40 and a touchdown. That's kind of a Tanyan line. You used to be a Texans fan last year, and Cobb was your favorite player to watch. I love Randall Cobb. Randall Cobb was amazing. If you guys don't know, Randall Cobb was amazing in college. He was a quarterback and wide receiver, and he was basically an option quarterback, and he was terrific at it. It was a lot of fun to watch whenever he was at UK or Kentucky. Sorry, UK for us means Kentucky. Dude did it all. Yes, he did. He was a lot of fun. I'm surprised they didn't use his arm more often because I would love to see him throw the ball, like run an end around with him and then let him throw it. That would be a lot of fun. Yeah, so Green Bay's an interesting team. They're hard for me to put my finger on right now because they can do anything. They can beat anybody um because of Aaron Rodgers. I just don't know that the defense is good enough to maintain the way that they should. Probably a documentary film of this. I mean, I think Cobb deserves it, but I'm a Kentucky fan, so why not? I think it was a lot of fun. There are a lot of Husky. There are a lot of quarterbacks from college that end up playing other positions in the NFL because it's so hard to play quarterback in the NFL that they end up wanting to just find a way to stay in the NFL. So a lot of them move to wide receiver or tight end, depending on their size, or some have been running backs. What was it? Julian Edelman? Julian Edelman was it him? Yeah, Edelman was a quarterback in college. Logan Thomas, the tight end, was a quarterback in college. There's a lot of quarterbacks every year that people talk about need to convert to a different position. I don't know about the Bills. Oh, ha. Suddenly Allen goes full-time receiver. Receiver mode sometimes. Yeah. A lot of people thought Josh Allen was going to need to be a tight end in the NFL, but he's proven a lot of people wrong. All right, so let's go. Last 15 minutes. Let's go through one more quick recap. I need some more water, but one more quick recap of all the games, and I'll tell you. Here's the thing. I don't have anybody. I don't have any upsets this week. I have teams that cover, but I don't have any upsets this week. Which feels weird. I feel like there has to be an upset, right? All right. Let's see here. All right. Every game, top to bottom. Your upsets this week are Eagles, Colts, and Seahawks. I mean, those are the closest in terms of margin, in terms of points. Because I mean, the Colts are Seattle's plus 4.5. Colts are let's see. Colts are 3.5, and what do you say? Seahawks, Colts, Eagles. Eagles are 3. Well, now down to 2. So, I mean, I could see the Eagles winning that game. I don't think so. I could totally see Seattle winning. That one wouldn't surprise me in the least. I could totally see Indy winning. Wouldn't surprise me in the least. I don't see the Giants winning against Carolina unless I'm just completely wrong against Carolina. The one that I could see potentially happening is Miami against Atlanta. That's the one that if I had to pick an upset, it would be Miami. Underdogs not. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, right? Is I think the upset, the actual full blown like winning the game. I don't have very many. I don't have very many underdogs covering. I have 1, 2, 3. Yeah, I only have 3 out of like 12 games. So it's the week of the favorite, basically. You think the Giants have a chance to win? I mean, it's possible. They're pretty banged up, and I still think Carolina is not a terrible team. Before this morning, I had Miami as well, but you convinced me to take Atlanta. Uh-oh. Hopefully I'm right. Hopefully I'm right. I'm not there on two. All right. Final recount of all the games. Here we go. Denver, Cleveland. We called that one perfectly. We had Cleveland minus 1.5. Said we would take them even up to 3, but not at 3.5. They end up winning by 3. So called that one perfectly. Called pretty much everything in the game. Hey, it's not that big of a deal if Baker doesn't play because they're not going to run or they're not going to try to throw the ball. And when they do, they're going to protect Keenum whenever they do it. So we nailed that game. Denver's defense isn't Denver's whole team isn't as good as anybody had hoped. So we're gonna have to reconsider them on a weekly basis, basically, until they figure something out. Once they get Jerry Jeudy out, maybe we'll think about it. Cincinnati, Baltimore, one of the more intriguing matchups. I really hope this is one of the 1:00 games that I have here in Tampa to be able to watch because this is a fascinating matchup for me. Baltimore is going to blitz daylights. Cincinnati and Joe Burrow is good against the blitz. They have a ton of weapons. They could potentially do this. This question mark is that offensive line. And can Zach Taylor, the offensive play caller, be able to scheme something up around that particular blitz and be able to adjust? This is a game of adjustments because Wink will adjust. Wink Martindale, defensive coordinator of the Ravens, will adjust a bunch. And Zach Taylor is going to have to adjust with him. I just don't think Zach Taylor can I just don't think Zach Taylor can get there. I don't have a ton of faith in Zach Taylor. However, I do think Cincinnati is good enough overall to be able to score points. And I think Baltimore is going to try to run the ball a good amount. And I think that run game will help keep this a little bit closer probably than what it should be. So I think this one's, I'm going to take Cincinnati plus 6.5 on this one. I should probably scroll up on these so we got them while we're going through them. And it's moved to 6, but I had them at plus 6.5 earlier. Washington, Green Bay. I'm taking Green Bay minus 8.5. The reason for that is I just believe that Green Bay is just a much better team. And while I think that Washington is starting to go, hey, we got to look at some things on this defense and change up what we're doing in the secondary. Like I would expect Landon Collins to play more linebacker this week. Rather than safety. They'll fix that safety position, which should help. That could potentially cause some problems, but I think overall Green Bay is going to be just too overwhelming. And Washington still has Heinicke in at quarterback, and I just can't bet on Heinicke to do anything, even to cover against a mediocre defense. So Green Bay escapes probably 8-10 point win, something like that. Husky, when is Fitz coming back? I don't know. I saw an article or saw a headline that his hip issue is taking longer to heal than expected. I think you're more likely to see Kyle Allen than you are to see before you see Ryan Fitzpatrick. So Kyle Allen is the third string, and at some point, I think Rivera and Scott Turner, who brought Kyle Allen over from Carolina, is going to be itching to try to get him in the game. Like I said, Heinicke fun to watch, but not good. Atlanta and Miami are training in different directions. Atlanta is kind of figuring things out in terms of how to work around the offensive line, how to let Matt Ryan be more productive, how to get Kyle Pitts involved. They can continue to use Cordell Patterson, Calvin Ridley. Calvin's in today, right? I just want to make sure. I heard he was. Yep, Calvin is not on the injury report, so he's good to go. Calvin Ridley playing today is going to be big for them. Miami, let's check and see if they've updated this. Miami. Let's see if they've. Nope, not yet. Need to see if Byron Jones and Xavier Howard are active. Give me 1 second. The Ravens make no sense to a lot of people crossover. The reason they make no sense is because they're a chameleon. They can do whatever they want from game to game. Dolphins inactives. I want to see if they're corners. Devontae Parker inactive. Stop making me click. Devontae Parker inactive. Greg Little. Nope. Both corners are good to go. All right. So it looks like both Miami corners are good to go. That's a huge thing for them. I just don't. Neither one of these teams are very good right now. For me, I feel like Atlanta overall is the better team, and I'm more willing to trust Atlanta's overall and their coaching because I think Brian Flores has a good handle on the defense. The problem is I think the offense for Miami is pretty atrocious right now. If they don't run the ball 20 plus times a day just to run the ball, I feel like that's a pretty egregious error on their part because I do think that they could potentially have a good game running the ball. So Miami is 28th in DVOA, 30th in offense, 26th in defense, and then Atlanta is 32nd, 29th and 30th. 29th in offense, 30th. Yeah, so these are just two bad teams. In games like this, I'm going to take the better coach, the better quarterback. And I think that both of those are Arthur Smith and Matt Ryan. Both of those are Falcons right now. So I'm taking Atlanta -2. Jets, New England. Everything about this tells me that New England should cover 6.5. The issue is, well, now it's 7. Everything about this tells me that New England should cover the 7. The one hesitation I have is the improvement that teams typically see after a bye week, and I think that 7 points is too much right now for New England. They've played up to the level of their competition and down to the level of their competition. I think this is a closer game than what people think. I think Jets should come in with a decent game plan. Zach Wilson should come in and be a little more comfortable, even though it scares me a little bit about him facing off against Belichick or the Belichicks, both Bill and Steve. Everything says New England in this game, but I'm going the Jets simply because it's after the bye week. I feel like there's going to be a marked improvement for them. Carolina and New York Giants, I'm taking Carolina -3. Reason for that is I just don't believe in the Giants. And I think people are overreacting. I think Carolina started off hot against bad teams. And then they ended up people have just fallen off the wagon and never wanted to climb back on. I don't think they're a bad football team. I think the Giants are a bad football team and the Giants are banged up. This to me just feels like a game where the line is off and Carolina should probably be favored by like at least 4.5, 5, 6 points. I feel like Carolina's probably got this by a touchdown or more. KC Tennessee. I'm taking KC -4. I do think that KC has a better matchup against the Titans than the Bills do. And I know some people might kind of be like, wait, what are you talking about? Because the Bills were supposed to be this well-rounded defense and an offense that could do whatever they want. I think the high power, big play KC offense is going to force Tennessee out of the run game. And I think KC's more willing to be aggressive than say the Bills were. The Bills were aggressive when they needed to be, not just crazy. Not just crazy aggressive. And I think the Chiefs have the weapons to be able to do that. I think the Titans are going to try to keep it close with Derrick Henry. I think the Chiefs are going to need to do more than just load up, but I also think they're going to be more aggressive and say, all right, if you guys throw it, we're going to do is go for every ball that's in the air. And I think they're going to probably get a turnover or two in their favor. I think they've been pretty unfortunate with some of their turnover luck this year. And at some point it's going to start to retrace, and we'll see if that's this week. Super under on the points total for Jets New England. It's at 42, which is the lowest of the week. That's hard. I think it's right there at 42 under or super. I think it's right there at 42. I think this is like a 24-21 game. I mean, you're talking 21-21, you're talking like 21-18 to be under. It's weird that it's such a low scoring game, low total, but the spread is a full touchdown extra point. I could totally take the under if you had to ask me. Let me check something real quick. Yeah, I think I think the under is a good call, super. Because even though the Jets aren't very good on offense, they're actually not terrible on defense. They're 21st in DVOA. Pats are 11th in DVOA on defense. It's just the offense. The offense for the Jets is last right now, and then New England is 23rd in offense. So it should be a game where there's not a ton. No Ramondre Stevenson. And Mac Jones just kind of dinking and dunking all over the place. I don't think they're going to push this game to the level that they did the Cowboys. We'll put it like that. So yeah, under seems like a fairly good bet there. That one's hard though, because I do feel like 42 is pretty low. KC Tennessee. So we talked about KC -4 there. Detroit and Los Angeles Rams. I'm taking Rams 16.5. I feel like this is a game where Sean McVay just absolutely puts it to the Lions and doesn't let up. He might let up sometime in the second half, but they're going to be up by 24 points by then. At least. And he knows what Jared Goff likes to do and what he can and can't do. He knows Jared Goff better than anybody, right? And in terms of how to scheme and make him not be able to do anything and make him uncomfortable, right? So I think that this is a big one for the Rams. I think they cover that, and typically I would want to go with the cover for such a big line for the underdog. But with Detroit, I don't think they're going to be able to run the ball. Like DeAndre Swift might have 100 yards catching today. That's the only, if DeAndre Swift can catch for 100 yards, I think that's the only way Detroit keeps this game close. Let's see. Kirk or Corey David this week. Slowcon, welcome in. That's question. JM 11:15. Jones, Howard both active. Oh, okay, good. I'm glad you called that out. Thanks JM. That would have helped me rather than me just trying to look it up myself. So I appreciate that. Kirk or Corey David this week. We talked about Kirk. Like I mean, it's hard because I think with Kirk, I don't know at what point Arizona really kind of takes their foot off the gas. I don't know. What and who do you mean by Corey David? I'm not following. Um oh, Davis. Okay, sorry. Um I would probably go with Kirk. I wouldn't. I'm not a HP. Thanks so much for tuning in, coming in, hanging out with us. Go Chiefs. I think you got a good. I think you got a good week coming. I don't think the Chiefs are as bad as everybody else. I've never jumped off that bandwagon. Um, I I think if I were to take if Slowcon, if I were to take a Jets receiver this week, I think Jamison Crowder would be the guy that I would want to take. Um, I trust him more to be effective. Although you could say that the Pats will probably take him away, knowing that he's kind of going to be Zach Wilson's safety blanket in the pass game. So if they take him away, then yeah. Although I could also say that Corey Davis, being the more dynamic of the two receivers, is probably the one that they go after. So I think Corey Davis is a roll of the dice. I think Kirk is probably more likely to. I think they're both a roll of the dice, but I think Kirk is the one that you could potentially get a big play from, versus something like that happening against the Patriots. All right, taking the Rams to cover the 16.5. It is. Oh, it's 1:00 already. All right, let's get through these. Philly Vegas. I'm taking Vegas -2. I think Vegas is just a much better team. I still don't trust Hurts yet. I really think that they are that the Raiders are a bad matchup for Philly. I think they can put up a ton of points. I don't know that Philly's going to be able to match the pace that they're going to be able to do. Of course, Slowcon, thanks man. Thanks for hanging out. Arizona, I'm taking Houston +20. I can't get behind a +20. I can't get behind a 20-point line. I think Houston will potentially be able to run the ball, which could negate what Arizona will be able to put up. And at some point, Arizona is going to take their foot off the gas, and maybe the Texans get like a backdoor cover or something like that. Bears Bucks. I'm taking the Bucks, or I'm taking the Bears, and Bears at +12. I don't think Tampa Bay runs away with that game. I think they play it close because they want to hand the ball off. And then Indy, San Francisco. I'm taking San Francisco -3.5. I still don't believe in Indy yet. New Orleans and Seattle. New Orleans -4.5. Just rolling the dice on that one because I feel like this is a coin flip game. It's an odd week. I think New Orleans is getting healthy. I think their defense is going to play a big part in this game versus what their offense can do. So leaning on that defense. So thanks everybody. That's the recap. Appreciate it. It is 1:00. Everybody have a terrific, wonderful rest of your day. Hope all of your teams win. Not only that, I hope all of your teams stay healthy. That's really probably the most important, right? That they stay healthy. If there's anything that you guys want to discuss, any last questions that you got, feel free to throw them in the chat before we get out of here. I'm interested to go see this Cincinnati Baltimore game, and also going to keep my eye on KC Tennessee. Those are the two games I'm really looking for. Unfortunately, they're both AFC, so I'm only going to get one, not the other. So let me do this. Oh, no, don't want to do that. Man, I got to get better at this figuring out how to raid people thing. Because by the time I figure out how to do this, everybody's already gone. All right, let's see. Sexy, Slowcon, JM, Crossover, Husky. I didn't see Gabe in here today. Austin, Be Eaten, Crossover, Gold Glover, everybody that's been in here. Appreciate everything that you guys do. So what I'm going to do now is, as we talked about before, Gold Glover. Oh, HP, can't forget you either. So my boy Gold Glover is the guy that he's always streaming live, kind of like a Red Zone on Sundays. So I'm going to send you guys over to him. and he's a great guy to kind of hang out with. Very, very entertaining, a lot of fun. He and G Girl usually end up together on Sunday, and it looks like he's alone for the moment. But I'm going to send you guys over there, and then I'm going to go get to watching some football. Hit me up on Twitter, at NFLosophy. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Looking forward to the next one on Tuesday night when we recap. Hopefully we'll have a 12-0, 13-0 record from this week. So really appreciate it. Have a good one, everybody.